Chapter 990. As compared to Xiangnan, they were still using the same solo style. This style might be able to balance both sides, but in reality, it had a fatal flaw. Yu Cixin smirked, placing his hands behind his head. There was a sharp beauty to it. If Supreme Alliance continues to fight like this, the competition will end prematurely. Hoshino didn't make any comments. His eyes were fixed on Supreme Alliance. Even his action of picking up a bottle of water to drink was recorded by the media. Unless it was an international competition, it would be difficult to watch both of them appear at the same time. Hoshino remained silent, which meant that he agreed with Yu Cixin's words. Supreme Alliance's double fight had to be a double fight in order to win. However, every team was different from each other. Or perhaps Supreme Alliance had their own way of fighting. But regardless, it wasn't possible to continue with the current pace. However, it wasn't clear when Qin Mo would interrupt the competition to guide them. Hoshino tapped the bottle in his hand. He had always wanted to know what exactly was on Qin Mo for Z to care so much about him. Xiangnan's fighting style is stable, the wilderness is clean, and Supreme Alliance isn't given a chance to come over. They didn't even forget to clear the troops. Since there wasn't any breaking point, the shoutcaster could only introduce the situation. Supreme Alliance is still moving the troops. Let's take a look at the top lane. Are they preparing for battle? The moment the shoutcaster finished his sentence, Xiangnan's player used a big move to attack Lin Feng. The other DPS player hid in the bushes, blocking the way. Such a strong attack was fatal to Lin Feng, leaving him with less than a third of his HP. If it had been a 1v1, Lin Feng wouldn't have lost, but it was a 1v2 and he was in a dangerous situation. Fortunately, there was a healing bag under the defense tower. If not, the second skill of the main attacker, Big Cannon, would have sent him back to the city with low HP. Beautiful. The shoutcaster said. It's a pity they didn't manage to take the first HP, as Xiangnan's main attacker hid in a good position, blocking the path, and in the later stages, they would have been able to kill him instantly. Now Lin Feng is hesitating whether he should continue guarding the tower. Another cannon shot. This is really when the two from Xiangnan unleash their skills at the same time. You can dodge one of them, but it's really hard to dodge the other. Their coordination is too good, one on the left and one on the right. Lin Feng should have returned to the city to heal himself. If not, if this drags on, he'll definitely die. If he doesn't defend, this tower will be gone. It seems like Xiangnan is going to suppress Supreme Alliance in all aspects. Wait a minute, Yunhu is here. He's going for the back row. What a beautiful move. However, it was useless. It was a 1v2 and the other party wasn't a newbie. The moment Yunhu arrived, Xiangnan's main attacker activated his sprinting skill. His attacks were well practiced and difficult for warriors to catch. In addition, there was another person restraining him. No matter how good Yunhu's skills were, he could only retreat to the bottom of the tower. His HP had dropped by half and it wasn't worth it. Everyone realized a problem. The rhythm of the match was in Xiangnan's hands. Chapter 991. The 2v2 was different from Feng Shang's single match. Even if Feng Shang lost, there was still the next match to win. But if they lost the 2v2, it would be the end. At this moment, Supreme Alliance's fans started to panic. Previously, Shui Yaoyao hadn't been able to understand the pressure that Feng Yi had mentioned. At this moment, when Supreme Alliance was being suppressed, the cheers from Xiangnan were hard to ignore. Sometimes, the cheers from the audience could affect the emotions of the players. Hence, regardless of the competition, their mental state had to be strong. No one knew if Lin Feng was affected or not, but he looked a little anxious. Shui Yaoyao glanced over at the youngster with a lollipop in her mouth. Both Highness Jiu and young Master Qin didn't seem to have any intention of guiding them. But this was the first time she saw Highness Joe watching a match so seriously. Her expression was different from usual. This meant that Lin Feng and Yun, who had met a strong opponent this time. Shui Yaoyao didn't know much about tactics, but when she saw that her team members didn't even have a chance to get out of the tower and were suppressed again and again, she understood the current situation. In the audience, someone pressed down on his cap but couldn't control his mouth. F***CK, it can't be, Lin Feng and Yun, whose performance is terrible. I can't believe we lost to Supreme Alliance. Captain, tell me, no matter how good they are, why are Lin Feng and Yun running away? They weren't like this during the single match. The person who spoke was Lin Chuntao. He wore a hat to prevent himself from being recognized by the fans. He also put on a mask for his captain. The two of them sat in a hidden position. Even though there were many spectators nearby, they weren't among them. That was right. Almost all the teams were present for the match between Supreme Alliance and Xiangnan. They were there just for the match, which was captured by the media. Lin Chuntao and Rao Rong weren't among them because of Rao Rong's current status. Before the investigation was completed, he couldn't return to the team. Besides, Lin Chuntao hadn't forgotten Director Huang's words. Their captain was still in danger. That was why he made such a disguise. Honestly, he had hoped for Supreme Alliance to win. After all, Supreme Alliance was the one who had defeated them and prevented them from entering the National League. Besides, if they lost the 2v2 match, Qin Mo wouldn't be able to win. If they lost the 2v2 match, Qin Mo wouldn't have the chance to play again. Lin Chuntao knew better than anyone else. Their captain wanted to watch the match between Qin Mo and Xiao Jing. The three of them had joined the professional team at the same time. Even though they were in different places, they had the same obsession. Their captain and Xiao Jing's greatest regret was not able to play against Qin Mo at his peak. Due to various reasons, the former number one team in the country had not been able to enter the national competition for 3 years. But things were different now. Supreme Alliance's team. With her around, Qin Mo wouldn't have to worry about anything. This year, Supreme Alliance's was the strongest team ever. If he walked here, he would be broken. He Chintao's would be the Team Lin team. Lin Chintao's. Chapter 992. Their individual fighting ability was too strong. This might be an advantage in a 1v1. In a team battle, Qin Mo would be the one commanding, balancing everyone's abilities. But in a 2v2, it wasn't an advantage. If they didn't get along well, the two of them would be too outstanding in their individual fights and would be suppressed by the opponent. It was impossible for Qin Mo not to know about this. But why did he send these two out? It was simple, it was a gamble. The other members of Supreme Alliance weren't a match for Xiangnan's duo. If Lin Feng and Yun teamed up, they might be able to fight, but it was too risky. That wasn't all. What worried Bojo the most was the rhythm of their typing. Because of her background, she was especially sensitive to the sound of the keyboard. The two of them were so well coordinated that even the keys of their left hands were on the same line. It was indeed a difficult fight. Kata. Xiangnan launched a new round of attacks. This time, it was stronger than before. Supreme Alliance's defense tower is about to be destroyed. The shoutcaster's voice landed. The first defense tower destroyed appeared on the screen. This match seemed to have gone by much faster than the previous one. In less than 5 minutes, a defense tower was destroyed. Was Supreme Alliance really going to lose? The fans were worried. The viewership ratings outside the arena would increase. Lin Feng and Yun weren't like Feng Shang. They had been in this circle for too long. So long that they had experienced Supreme Alliance's prosperity and also Supreme Alliance's fall. They had been gaming for so many years. They couldn't afford to lose. Yu Cixin yawned lazily. From now on, Supreme Alliance has to take back the rhythm. If not, this match will be too boring. I woke up early to watch your favorite little spade, don't you think so, Hoshino? Hoshino glanced at him. Yes. You admit it so readily. Yu Cixin tugged his collar, his aura exuding a devilish aura. Why hasn't Qin Mo asked for any guidance? Probably because of trust. Hoshino glanced at the youngster's dark eyes. There was a light in them that he had never seen before. Qin Mo wasn't the only one who had changed Z, even the other members of Supreme Alliance had warmed her up. Otherwise, the light in his eyes wouldn't have dimmed even now. Yu Cixin pondered over this word. Trust. That was something he rarely got or believed in. However, he was curious as to why Qin Mo didn't move. Wait for the two of them to get used to each other. Was that even possible? In such a short period of time. Xiangnan had already started dismantling the second defense tower. It was as if the two of them had a shield and a knife. There was not a single flaw to be found. From Bojo's angle, Lin Fang's eyes were bloodshot. He had all the energy in his body but he couldn't find a suitable way to release it. He watched as the tower of his faction fell so quickly. A sense of unwillingness started to gather in his palms. How could he lose like this? He never wanted to see that person's head lowered ever again. Especially when he was about to leave. Chapter 993. Europe. In reality, it wasn't far. It was just a day's flight from Jiang City. But Lin Feng knew that it wasn't the location that pulled them apart. It was their plans for the future and their circle of friends. Sometimes, Lin Feng would always be afraid. This fear was something that he had since he was young. He was afraid that his brother, who was always with him, would one day fall too far behind him. After all, that person was so outstanding, be it in studies or fighting. In order not to be looked down upon by that person, he, who wasn't very smart, started to study harder than others, practicing his skills and playing ball. Lin Feng understood that people could be like that when they were young, doing whatever they wanted. But it wasn't like that when they grew up. Lin Feng didn't tell Yunhu that the Lin family was moving. Moving away from the courtyard was equivalent to leaving a circle. In reality, it wasn't that bad. Anyway, the Lin family was rich. But it was different. The Yun family was powerful and they only had one son, Yunhu. Although Lin Feng appeared to be naive, he was actually more farsighted than anyone else. No matter how much Auntie Yun liked him, it was because he was Yunhu's brother and nothing else. The Lin family couldn't take any more provocation. It wasn't that Lin Fang's parents didn't mention sending Lin Feng overseas. But Lin Feng understood that they needed him to stay in the country. Be it at the company or at home. The Lin family was defeated. Some things would change. Both of them had been eating well since they were young and they were equally matched. Lin Feng was afraid that Yunhu would be studying abroad while he was a regular at the dining table. When that happened, they probably wouldn't have anything to talk about. No matter how deep their relationship was, it would slowly fade with the difference in social status and location. Only by winning. That was the only way for that person to remember forever. He, Lin Feng, had appeared in his youth. Lin Feng glanced at Yunhu. That person was still defending. The second tower hadn't shattered. They still had a chance. At this moment, Lin Feng's right hand stopped. He suddenly changed his direction. He didn't head to the tower to provide support. Instead, he ran to the jungle to kill monsters. Yunhu's gaze shifted. He looked at that person's serious side profile and smiled. He continued to defend the tower. He had no intention of returning to the city to heal even though he didn't have much HP left. Xiangnan's players prepared to cross the tower and attack. Yunhu took a step back to avoid the soldiers' advance. Then, he moved nimbly to the bottom of the tower and counterattacked. Of course, this counterattack wasn't enough for Yunhu to take the first HP. On the contrary, Yunhu's HP was lower than before. Fortunately, a healing pack came out, allowing him to replenish his HP and avoid the danger of being killed. The Xiangnan soldiers who had just charged into the defense tower had lost a third of their HP. Chapter 994. The atmosphere seemed to have sunk to its lowest point. Especially Supreme Alliance's fans, their voices weren't as loud as they had been at the start. They had never seen the Feng Yun duo being suppressed so miserably. Yun, who had been guarding the tower and hadn't come out. Even if they didn't understand, they understood that it was going to be difficult for their favorite team to win. Anxiety seemed to be contagious. At that moment, they felt that the Feng Yun duo shouldn't exist. If they had fought separately, they would have been able to utilize each other's strengths. But now, they were dragging each other down and weren't able to work together. Fans were a strange existence. There was one thing that Feng Yi was right about. When girls saw two handsome people, they might say that they were a good match, but when it came to reality, they wouldn't be giving their blessings. Just like now, there was already a small grudge between the fans. They felt that Lin Feng hadn't been there to support them in time, hence, they started to make a fuss. They were also divided into the fans and the CP fans. Actually, Lin Feng doesn't have any special abilities. He's indeed a little fast, but if Almighty Qin and I were to fight together, we would definitely win. But Almighty Qin and I will definitely win. Lin Feng wasn't online the whole time. I don't even want to talk about his operation. From the past until now, when didn't he rely on me to turn the situation around? If we really want to compare, Lin Feng was also brought up by me. In the past, for my sake, it didn't matter how you guys tried to create a couple. But now, it's obvious that Lin Feng has implicated me. It was unknown if the media was deliberately trying to stir up the topic, but they singled out this fan and even broadcasted it to let the audience see this scene. Bo Jiu frowned instinctively. She was angry at the director's actions and the words. Perhaps when some fans liked a person, they would really treat that person as their own family, but they never thought about whether or not they were really good to their idol when they did something. It wasn't a good method to trample on someone to like someone else. Besides, if Yun Hu had heard this, he would have smashed his mouse. For some fans to explode at this time meant that this problem had existed in the past. But Bo Jiu glanced up, her gaze landing on the naive Lin Feng, who was still focused on moving his mouse. She lifted the corners of her lips. He had heard some of the words and had probably digested them himself. Lin Feng hadn't even told Yun Hu about the extent of the situation. There were indeed a lot of fans of the couple. There would be a lot of cute couples. Even if it was just a normal interaction, they would still talk about love. Once the fans felt that one of them was not worthy of the other, they would say anything. As someone who had been through it before, Bo Jiu knew their tricks. They wouldn't say anything on the surface and would send you a private message secretly. When she saw the first message, she immediately blocked it. She didn't know what Lin Feng was doing. It was just that she and the Almighty had only been a couple for a short period of time, and there were already a bunch of people who wanted her dead. In the past few years, how many times had Lin Feng received comments like, "You're not worthy of our Cloud University. You're so bad at games, don't drag our Cloud University down." At that time. Chapter 995. Lin Feng was thinking about how to win. Yes, from the start, the naive Lin Feng had been thinking about how to win. The first time someone said that about him, he would explain himself, explain the game, explain that he wouldn't be a burden to Yunhu in the future. But, for the 100th time, he looked at the private messages and told himself that he couldn't let that person lose again. Or perhaps, you people are nothing, knowing that I'm the most upset if I lose. I'm a straight man, why would I form a CP? He would suspect if he was really a burden to that person. For the 1000th time, he sat in front of the computer, practicing his hand speed for 8 hours. He practiced when his skills couldn't keep up. He wasn't that smart. Since young, he had to spend 3 hours or even half a day to memorize the key points that Yunhu could remember in an hour. Sometimes, Lin Feng would think that if it wasn't for that person, reminding him to work hard, he would never have become such an outstanding person. And now, he just didn't want to lose. It wasn't just because of that person. It was because if he lost here, those days of training in front of the computer, Yao Yao's dream of becoming more dazzling, Uncle's return to his original self, Baby Feng's month of hard work and Little Spade's absence. For these people, he couldn't be a burden to anyone. Lin Feng moved the mouse, the view on the screen switched to Yunhu's side. Because compared to Lin Feng, this battle seemed to be more interesting. Yunhu's positioning and speed were especially beautiful, so much so that people couldn't help but ask what exactly Lin Feng was doing. Why didn't he replace Yunhu? Didn't Lin Feng know that Almighty Yun was on the verge of death? Just as the fan said that, a line of words suddenly appeared on the big screen. The Tyrant King has been killed. Tyrant King. The two from Xiangnan paused, immediately switching to the small map. But they realized that Lin Feng hadn't just killed the Tyrant King, he had also wiped out the minions in the bottom lane and the beasts on their side. But that wasn't the end. Just as they were switching to the small map, a figure appeared behind them. It was the warrior controlled by Lin Feng. It was the warrior controlled by Lin Feng. He immediately marked the opponent's main damage dealer in the back row. He raised his ultimate and followed up with a second skill, followed up with a critical hit. As Lin Feng's speed was too fast, coupled with his current finances, he was the highest in the entire arena. Everyone knew that maneuvering was very important in Hero. However, there was another important factor in the game, and that was the economy of both players. Having more money meant that your equipment would be better than your opponent's. The better the equipment, the greater the damage. In other words, with the same operating methods and skills, whoever had a higher economy would basically decide who would live and who would die in this PK. It was too late for Xiangnan to activate the backline protection measures. In melee combat, ranged damage dealers were always vulnerable to attacks. Moreover, Lin Feng had jumped over directly, leaving no chance for Xiangnan to react. So it was too late. Not only that, but Lin Feng seemed to have seen that they had finished their big moves before he stabbed his spear in. Chapter 996. The First Drop of Blood. First kill. Just thinking about these words would make one's blood boil. Not to mention, when they saw the word KO appear on the screen, they instantly stood up with explosive force. The screams almost tore the roof off. Everyone's gaze fell on Lin Feng. His eyes shone with a bright light. The fan who had been saying that Lin Feng was a burden to Yun, who felt his mind go blank for a moment, his expression turning ugly. However, no one was paying attention to these messages. Even the commentator was stunned for a second before he hurriedly said, "Beautiful. This move is really beautiful. Let's see the replay." Basically, no one watched the replay. This was because Lin Feng didn't return to the tower after killing the main damage dealer. Instead, he took a step back and stood in front of the Xiangnan warrior. Half health versus full health. There was no big move yet. What was Lin Feng trying to do? The shoutcaster was confused. But soon, he understood. Yunhu, who had been standing at the bottom of the tower, had moved. After eating the HP pack, he sprinted and pierced through. The two of them trapped the warrior from Xiangnan in the middle. Yunhu's big move took away half of the opponent's HP. Lin Feng dodged to the side and followed up with his second skill. With a beautiful set of footwork, he closed in to block his opponent. It had to be said that the Xiangnan warrior's positioning was beautiful. Even at this moment, his maneuvers weren't messed up. With a dodge, he managed to shake off Lin Feng. But it was only temporary. Every time Yunhu's attack landed on him, his HP would drop rapidly. Lin Feng didn't even give him a chance to breathe. One of the twins waved the mouse and saw that they had escaped back to the tower. They should be safe now. With less than half of his HP remaining, he used a high-level skill. Tower Assault. 2 more words appeared on the screen, accompanied by an exciting sound effect. Double kill. All of a sudden, the arena was in an uproar. The shoutcaster maintained his rationality. Lin Feng's HP is severely low. If he crosses the tower like this, wouldn't he be trading a life for a life? Looking at the screen again, it was indeed very thrilling. However, the young man smiled with the lollipop in his mouth and only said 2 words, no. Bo Jiu replied because she could tell from Lin Feng's attack just now. She wondered where he had learned the Almighty's calculation methods. He was actually able to use it. Even though Lin Feng was still being attacked by the defense tower and his HP was getting lower and lower, he still managed to escape from the tower and hide in the bushes. He was about to return to the city with only a sliver of HP left. It would be belittling Xiangnan if it ended just like that. At this moment, Xiangnan's main long-range attacker stood in the middle of the city. Based on his many years of gaming experience, he fired a long-range cannon at Lin Feng, who was about to return to the city. K.O. Lin Feng, Yunhu, Bo Jiu, the shoutcaster, almost everyone had the same expression. Lin Feng was almost petrified. From the way he held the mouse, it could be seen that he had been in that position for a long time. After all, even Xiangnan's side didn't expect that the attack would really hit. Chapter 997. Lin Feng couldn't understand why he could hear Zhao Sanpeng's laughter through the soundproof headset. If he wasn't in the middle of a game, he would have stood up to beat him up. This shot. Lin Feng held it in. In the end, he reached out to rub his ears. He had to kill his way back. It was too embarrassing. Why couldn't he return home beautifully after the double kill? He didn't want to recall being killed on his way back to the city. Yunhu returned to the city as well, glancing over at Lin Feng, who was waiting for his revival. He released his mouse for a second. Then he placed his hand on Lin Feng's head, rubbing it before retracting it swiftly. But even so, it was still recorded by the camera on the screen. Yu Cixin arched a brow, a hint of playfulness in his eyes. Supreme Alliance sure is interesting. It seems like there's a change in tempo. Hoshino was still like an ancient prince, twirling the carbon pen in his hands, a faint smile on his face. They might seem to be playing individually, but in reality, they are expanding the scope of the double. They aren't on the same path, but they have a clear division of labor. One of them is guarding the tower to stall for time, while the other is in charge of increasing their finances and minions. Xiangnan didn't just trade 2 for 1, they even destroyed 2 of their defense towers. It's almost a done deal. Yu Cixin smiled devilishly. Next, let's see if the little spade Z you are concerned about is the real Z or fake Z. Hoshino didn't reply. On the other hand, Lin Chintao, who was sitting in the corner, pushed up the brim of his cap. His handsome face was scrunched up, and he was a little confused. Why do I feel like this is so familiar? Qin Mo Rao Rong only said 2 words. When Lin Chintao glanced over, Rao Rong's eyes seemed to be bright and heavy. Rao Rong's eyes seemed to be bright and heavy at the same time. During the semi-finals, Qin Mo and Spade Z used similar tactics to defeat you and me. Lin Chintao paused for a second before he reacted. F***ck, that's why it looks so familiar. Lin Feng and Yun Hu are quick learners. Sinister, they are too sinister. Although that was what he said, Lin Chintao knew how difficult it was to achieve such an effect. What state were they in when they first entered the arena? They knew it very well. However, in such a short period of 10 minutes, he could even see Lin Feng's rapid growth. That in itself was already very powerful. Under such great pressure, he was still able to think of such a move and calculate the time it took for the big move to be released. Lin Chintao didn't think he could do it. Perhaps he would understand after the competition, but to grow during the competition, Supreme Alliance might really be able to defeat Xiangnan. Rao Rong watched a certain someone who was in a daze, his voice rising again. Do you know what the most challenging part of a 2v2 is? Tacit understanding. Lin Chintao thought to himself. Rao Rong shook his head. No, it's not chemistry, it's trust. As long as there was enough trust, such perfect cooperation could be achieved. Whether it was Lin Feng, Yun Hu, or those two, Rao Rong lowered his lids, turning toward Supreme Alliance. Bo Jiu reached into her pocket but didn't find anything. She tried to strike a conversation. Brother Mo, did you expect this? No. Qin Mo watched the youngster's actions, tossing the candy in his pocket to her, his voice dignified. This is the last one, you can only eat it after the competition. Chapter 998. The 2v2 competition came to an end. Xiangnan had already noticed the problem. This wave wasn't just about the rhythm, it was also a problem with the strategy. The twins' innate advantage was the tacit understanding between the two of them. This was originally the most lethal weapon for others. But because of Lin Feng and Yun Hu's strategy, this situation was completely broken. If they were to fight separately, the twins' individual ability wouldn't be a match for Lin Feng and Yun Hu. If they didn't split up, they could only watch as Lin Feng cleared the troops to increase his economy and the defense tower disappearing quickly. Once the situation was broken, the game progressed faster. If they were to lead the troops, the super troops would be able to destroy the defense tower. Previously, Supreme Alliance had been suppressed under the defense tower and couldn't come out. After that, Supreme Alliance showed everyone their speed. Lin Feng's attack speed. Along with the news of the Almighty's death, the screen flashed. Xiangnan couldn't hold on anymore. Lin Feng led a wave of troops to attack from the side, directly to the center of the city. The two of them wanted to return to the city but were interrupted by Yun Hu's long-range big move. In less than a few seconds, there was the sound of the city being destroyed. The screen was filled with a dazzling silver light. Lin Feng took off his headphones with difficulty. Just as he was about to heave a sigh of relief, he shook his numb hand. Yun Hu had already stood up, one hand on the table. He leaned over and whispered in his ear, "Don't forget what you promised me. Don't run, understand?" Lin Feng's neck stiffened visibly. F***ck, it couldn't be. He still remembered. Besides, we're all gay people like this. They like to talk directly into other people's ears. F***ck Lin Feng felt like he had suffered a loss. He thought about it carefully. Why was he the one who took the double kill and destroyed the defense tower? Why was he the one who was suppressed in the end? This wasn't a good deal. Lin Feng lowered his head and went down. No one else knew why. As long as he knew, Supreme Alliance won the 2v2 match. But those who were observant could tell that if the attack hadn't been so fast, Supreme Alliance wouldn't have won if the competition had dragged on. This was because the twins had already pushed the tower to the high ground. Supreme Alliance's advantage lay in the large dragon in the wilderness. With the flying dragon as their vanguard, Xiangnan wasn't able to defend in time. It could be said that this was a match of equal strength. Even until the end of the competition, the score was still 2-1. Supreme Alliance only had one more kill than Xiangnan. It wasn't that they weren't good enough. It was just that both sides' positioning, skills, and even experience and judgment allowed them to rarely lose their lives. However, everyone knew that whether it was the qualifiers, the provincial competition, the regional competition, or even the semi-finals, Xiangnan had won every single one of them. Even when they met strong teams, they had already won the first 2 rounds. But now... The shoutcaster glanced down the field. This is the first time Xiangnan has suffered a loss. It seems like Supreme Alliance has broken Xiangnan's record to a certain extent. There will be a half-an-hour break and Xiangnan will probably decide the final lineup based on Supreme Alliance's strategy. This should be enough to force out Xiangnan's true strength. The other shoutcaster chuckled. Xiangnan will only use their full lineup during international competitions. But for this round, I'm afraid they won't be able to make any adjustments. Yes, a 2v2 is very damaging. You mentioned Supreme Alliance's strategy. What do you think Supreme Alliance's strategy is? How should I put it? The shoutcaster glanced at the camera as though he was searching for a word to describe it. In the end, he said, they are strong against strong opponents. Strong against strong opponents. The other shoutcaster arched a brow. What do you mean? Let's talk about the first player, Feng Shang. It's rare for a rookie to grow so quickly. Even during the battle, he might have been slow at the start but towards the end, he got better. Honestly, I've watched Supreme Alliance's previous matches and he wasn't like this back then. The shoutcaster's voice was deep and convincing. I believe that as long as he is given time to grow, it won't be long before Supreme Alliance has another ace like Yun who can take charge of the situation. So you are analyzing Supreme Alliance from Feng Shang's perspective. That's not it. The shoutcaster pointed to the screen. In the 2v2 match, both of us can see that Lin Feng and Yun who didn't intend to use such a strategy at the start. They changed their strategy after seeing the coordination between the Xiangnan players and decided to use a peripheral strategy to attack the dragon and the tower instead of killing people because they know how difficult it will be in the later stages of the match. Usually, when players are at a disadvantage in a match, they would be in a daze, but Supreme Alliance seems to be the exact opposite. Their trust in each other has reached a certain level, and the more disadvantageous the situation, the more impressive their strategy is. They are able to adjust their strategy according to the opponent's habits. This is an extremely high level of strategy, hence, it is most appropriate to describe Supreme Alliance as the stronger they are, the stronger they are. Seems like you are confident Supreme Alliance can win against Xiangnan. Not necessarily. The shoutcaster was objective. Xiangnan's strength doesn't lie in their total victory. Even if they lose a round, it won't affect their confidence. Besides, Xiangnan's team battle isn't something anyone would want to challenge. In esports, it is important to set the pace, but in Xiangnan's team battle, once you start, you will understand that the opponent's strategy is ever-changing and it isn't easy to set the pace. After hearing the shoutcaster's words, the cameras immediately shifted to Xiangnan's position. When they saw the image on the screen, the audience was astonished. Xiangnan didn't look like they had lost the 2v2. On the other hand, Xiao Sanpang patted the twins on their shoulders. Lin Feng is too shameless. You guys aren't his match when it comes to shamelessness. He always sneakily fights the dragon. Seriously, I can't stand Supreme Alliance for this. Everyone, When they turned to Xiao Jing, he added, recognize your own shortcomings and change them during the international competition. Almighty Xiao seemed to be implying that Supreme Alliance was helping their own team members in this double match. It seems like Xiangnan isn't affected at all. Let's wait for the team battle. Wait a minute, Xiangnan's team members are out. The strongest lineup. It is indeed the strongest lineup. What about Supreme Alliance? Qin Mo, Spade Z, north of Yin Mountain, Coco, and Shui Yao Yao. There's a girl in both teams. Girls are different from each other. I'm not exaggerating, but Goddess Luo doesn't only destroy the other team's girl, she can also destroy Coco. This sentence was indeed correct. Because in the esports world, Goddess Luo was the only female player in the top 10 in the country. Her positioning and hand speed weren't exaggerated at all. The reason why Xiangnan was so strong was because of her cannons. That's right, it will be difficult for Supreme Alliance to win the team battle. Don't forget, Supreme Alliance has Almighty Qin. Xiangnan will find a way to suppress Almighty Qin. Just wait and see, Almighty Zhao's skills aren't much different from Almighty Qin's. It is impossible to rely on one person to lead the team. What about Spade Z? The FC King of Zone C, this is a team battle, it's hard to say. Listening to the endless discussions, Yi Zichen nodded. Supreme Alliance didn't seem to have any changes. Many people said that perhaps this was how growing up was. Being criticized, and attacked. At the start, when they heard these, they would feel terrible. Because the negative impact would always be stronger than the positive. But when you have teammates, when you have that youngster sitting beside you, you will understand. You will understand that I am standing here, pure and innocent. I will only speak with my strength. Even if I lose in the end, I will have a clear conscience. This was Shui Yao Yao's thoughts. She had always liked Goddess Luo and was aware of the difference between the two of them. She would give it her all in this match. Bo Jiu glanced over at the girl beside her whose eyes were shining brightly. He retracted his outstretched hand. Because she knew that Yao Yao didn't need any more advice. Supreme Alliance was in the best state to fight. Half an hour of rest time had entered the last minute of the countdown. Are you ready? Qin Mo stood up and stuffed one hand into his pocket. He stood tall and straight, exuding an air of elegance. His skin was fair to begin with, and under the light and camera, it looked like high-quality enamel. His thin lips were as light as water, and when the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, he exuded an aura that could turn the clouds and rain with a flip of his hand. I'm ready. Qin Mo raised his eyebrows and said faintly, let's go. The five of them lined up in a row. That scene was so handsome on the screen that it made people tremble. Not to mention the atmosphere in the stadium. The youngster's silver hair was the most eye-catching. She had long legs and a slim waist. She was in her battle uniform and the black hair band didn't diminish her handsomeness. Instead, it made the cameraman zoom in on her. The moment the two teams stepped onto the platform, not only did the atmosphere in the stadium reach a peak, even the views on the live broadcast platform exceeded 100 million in an instant. The real competition is about to begin. Yu Cixin chuckled, the devilish aura still present on his lips. Hoshino's eyes landed on the youngster. When he saw the lollipop in her mouth, he couldn't help but chuckle. What time was it? She was still so fond of sweets. Yu Cixin noticed Hoshino's gaze, but this time, he just narrowed his eyes and didn't say a word. Amidst the deafening sounds of support, there were a few crisp sounds. Supreme Alliance entered the game together. There was a ding. Chapter 999. It was just a few simple words. But when these words appeared on the big screen, some of the Spade fans couldn't help but clench the cola in their hands. It was about to begin. When all his emotions were left with this one sentence, even his heartbeat began to tremble. The young man sat in front of the computer. First, he held the mouse in his right hand and shook it a few times. Then, he clicked and entered the battle. He was so calm and composed that people who didn't know better would think that the young man was just playing an ordinary online game. The young man didn't seem to be a very serious person. He looked at the screen with a smile on his face, as though he was thinking about how to fast-forward this segment. However, choosing the game character that one would control was an indispensable part of the competition. The shoutcaster pressed down on the microphone. Come, let's take a look at their choices. Supreme Alliance is the same as before, using 2 assassins while Xiangnan is going all out. Another shoutcaster chimed in, for the past 2 years, Xiangnan has rarely sent out a full lineup, right? Indeed, that's why it won't be an easy match for Supreme Alliance. From the screen, we can see that Xiangnan's characters are the bane of Supreme Alliance's characters. It won't be easy for Supreme Alliance to use the double assassin route. Following the commentator's explanation, the game page opened. Everyone entered the map and split into red and blue teams. Supreme Alliance was the red team while Xiangnan was the blue team. The team battle had officially begun. Everyone's eyes were filled with unprecedented attention. Regardless of whether it was the spectators in the arena or the esports fans in the internet cafes, they were all very quiet at this moment. Thinking back to that scene, even the internet cafe that was usually noisy became a low-decibel place. Other than the sound of the game's special effects, no one spoke. The camera first followed Qin Mo, then switched to Xiao Jing's side, and finally to Qin Mo's side. It locked onto him. Almighty Qin's strategy is the same as before. Start from the jungle on the blue monster's side. Assassins who use up skills quickly can only fly if they have mana. Otherwise, they won't be able to fight. Wait, is there someone in the bushes? It's true. Almighty Qin found it. That was why he took a step back. This was the most effective way to deal with the opponent stealing his mana. However, as soon as he took a step back, Zhao Sanpang rode his horse and charged over. Qin Mo's mouse moved, his left hand moving quickly on the keyboard. He successfully dodged the fatal attack from the left. What no one expected was that other than Zhao Sanpang, there were 2 more people behind him. Beauty Luo and Xiangnan's support. A ranged attack, a stun mark, a pincer attack. Qin Mo avoided one of them, but he didn't manage to avoid the stun circle. He was rooted to the spot. Beauty Luo carried the sniper cannon on her shoulder and rolled to fire. Qin Mo was left with a quarter of his HP. At this moment, the sound of horse hooves could be heard again. It was Zhao Sanpang from before. He raised his knife and charged straight at Qin Mo. That kind of lethality was accompanied by a strong airflow. No matter how fast an assassin was, if they encountered this move, they would die. Chapter 1000. F***CK. No one had expected the 3 of them to steal the blue. Luo hadn't appeared at the start, hiding in the bushes. They had planned to capture Almighty Qin in the jungle. Anyone who played games would know that no matter how good an assassin was, he wouldn't be able to fight against 3 people at the start, much less in such a situation. If the sorcerer in the middle lane could provide support in time, it might be possible, but Yao Yao was inexperienced. She hadn't switched to the small map, and when the other party arrived, they had already missed the best time to provide support. A coordinated attack in the middle and jungle. Yu Ci's lazy voice was sharp. This is Supreme Alliance's weakness. Xiangnan took advantage of this. If Qin Mo hadn't retreated quickly, he would have been surrounded. But even if he had dodged the attack, he wouldn't have been able to escape. There was a loud smack. Zhao Sanpang hadn't expected Qin Mo to be able to dodge such a heavy blow. He was starting to doubt his captain's guess. Qin Mo's hand hadn't recovered. It couldn't be a lie, right? Fortunately, he saw his teammate behind him. It was Goddess Luo, aiming her cannon at Qin Mo. This time, it was impossible to dodge. Both the shoutcasters and the audience couldn't help but close their eyes. No one could bear to see Xiangnan take the first kill from Qin Mo. Everyone was certain that there was no way to stop the attack. Goddess Luo's maneuvering was too awesome. Her positioning showed that she had predicted Zhao Sanpang's attack wouldn't be able to kill Qin Mo. It was a lethal shot. Even if Qin Mo was fast, he wouldn't be able to dodge. Right at this moment, a white figure flashed past. She didn't go for the target, instead, she charged forward, leaping over the tower and blocking Qin Mo, taking the shot. F***CK, little spade. Zhao Sanpang was the first to shout. After all, they were so close to taking the first kill and it would be Qin Mo. They hadn't killed Qin Mo more than once or twice. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but it was ruined. Where the hell did this guy come from? Come back once you get the blue, Xiao Jing ordered. Zhao Sanpang obeyed, retreating swiftly. The shoutcaster heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Spade Z's support came in time. Chapter 1001. They couldn't link up in the middle. This might not be a big deal in a normal match. But this was the National League, the highest level match. All the battles in the high-level matches were in the jungle. There was no meaning in defending the tower. It wasn't just a test of the players' hand speed, it was also a test of their awareness. The constant switching of the map wasn't just to know where the enemy was, but also the situation of their teammates. When many people played hero, they thought sorcerer was just a control in the middle lane. In reality, that wasn't the case. A good sorcerer would always pay attention to the situation in their jungle so that they could provide support in time. The moment the battle started, the difference was clear. When Xiangnan sorcerer saw their people going over to steal the blue, he left the middle lane without a word, heading to the river at the side. He wanted to restrain Coco, who was coming over to support, so that his teammates could steal the blue and kill with ease. Shui Yaoyao's reaction wasn't that fast, she only moved after the blue had been stolen. It was obviously too late, missing the best time for the team battle. Originally, she thought the atmosphere would die down. Unexpectedly, after Qin Mo's HP was full, he said faintly, "Come back." The 3 words were calm and unhurried. The silver-haired youngster's thin lips curved upwards, leaping from the jungle and hiding in the bushes. Blue or red? Red. When Qin Mo was commanding, his voice was low, the indifferent quality spreading through the earpiece, giving them an inexplicable sense of confidence. Coco, go up to support, Yao Yao, restrain the middle lane, don't let him come over, you don't have to head over, uncle, go to the jungle to harass Xiao Jing. When Yin Weiyao wasn't smoking, he still looked the same, replying, all right, before leaping up. It was important for the main attacker to take down the red beasts. Hence, after stealing the opponent's blue, Goddess Luo cleared a wave of troops and jumped into her jungle, starting to attack the red beasts that came out. Everything seemed peaceful. Until Coco, who was half HP, came over. Goddess Luo maneuvered and pulled away the damage, hitting Coco directly. Zhao Sanpang, who had been clearing the troops, ran back on his horse, providing support in time. 1:00. Qin Mo's command allowed Coco to dodge Zhao Sanpang's knife. Having missed his attack, he cursed, F***ck me. Then, he turned around and slashed horizontally. Close combat, follow up. Qin Mo moved his mouse as he moved forward. With a single move, he dealt damage and slowed them down. Zhao Sanpang wasn't active but his mouth wasn't idle. Red, hurry and kill the red beasts, don't let them get it. When he saw Qin Lu's figure appear in their wilderness, Xiao Jing had wanted to jump over to help him. But with Yin Wuyao holding him back, even if he could shake him off, it would take time. But Yin Wuyao knew that he couldn't last much longer. Whether it was his skills or his current finances, he was still a level lower than Xiao Jing. When he was left with less than half of his HP, he retreated and told his teammates. Xiao Jing went over. Beauty Luo and Zhao Sanpang initially thought that the opponent's target was their red monster, because they were indeed there for the red monster. Chapter 1002. F***CK. That was Zhao Sanpang's first reaction. He couldn't use any of his skills. Little Spade, do you have to be so despicable, hiding in the bushes for 5 whole seconds? You sure are patient. He thought that was the end, but he didn't expect his opponent to stab him with his long spear. Moreover, there were 3 of them, and Coco was attacking from a distance. Zhao Sanpang's HP wasn't full to begin with, and now it was down to a third. Originally, he thought that he had finally gotten rid of the control and could run away. But at this moment, Qin Mo closed in again. With a wave of his long sword, he slowed him down again. But Zhao Sanpang wasn't afraid, he was riding a horse, so he had the advantage of 4 legs. But the moment he escaped from the electric formation, a figure dashed through the bushes, leaping over the wall. With a flick, he was sent flying into the air once again. Beauty Luo's support wasn't effective. It wasn't just because of Qin Mo's interference, but also because the figure had dodged the attack when he ran. Kata, kata, it was the silver-haired youngster with the lollipop in her mouth. Her fingers were nimble on the keyboard, and even her right hand was moving the mouse, drawing lines on the keyboard. The long spear moved horizontally, and silver light streaked across the screen. The sound effects were so crisp. K.O. The first kill. It was definitely the first kill. The screams from the audience were earth-shattering. In that instant, Zhao Sanpang's expression was blank. The shoutcaster couldn't believe it. In such a situation, Spade Z was still able to get the first kill, which was amazing. The young man, on the other hand, was retreating to farm as he pressed down on the public speaker. He smirked, "This is payback for your attack just now. Compared to stealing red, I prefer the blue you stole from us." After a second, Zhao Sanpang spat out, "What the F***CK?" The youngster was calm. "Who asked you to encircle my brother Mo?" Zhao Sanpang was speechless. Why did it feel like he had bullied the other party's little sweetheart, which was why the other party was targeting him? He felt so wrong for giving away this kill. "I say, you guys are a couple. Can you not bring your personal feelings into the game?" The young man's voice was even lazier now. "Don't talk trash. It's useless. You're dead anyway." Zhao Sanpang wanted to jump up. Xiao Jing's finger moved. "Qing troops, don't let others take away your emotions." Only then did Zhao Sanpang realize that he was losing his cool. Who would have thought that Little Spade would go after him instead of hitting the red? This was a personal grudge. Just as the commentator was about to play the replay, the director suddenly switched the camera angle. In the middle lane, Shui Yaoyao was pierced by Xiao Jing with an invisible pierce. He grabbed her and moved closer to attack her. Shui Yaoyao's control was very good, but she couldn't freeze her opponent at all. Because it was Xiao Jing. How could Shui Yaoyao defeat Xiao Jing in a 1v1? Soon, the game's music started playing again. Shui Yaoyao's corpse lay directly under the tower. It had only been 3 seconds since Spade Z took the first blood. The score was once again tied. Once again, Xiao Jing's finances became the highest among all the contestants. Supreme Alliance's first blood advantage was gone. The middle lane also lost a large wave of minions. Chapter 1003. Supreme Alliance's chances of winning aren't high. Usually, the shoutcasters wouldn't give a conclusion to a team battle, but the collapse of the middle lane was a clear indication of their loss. The assassin wasn't up, which meant that the rhythm wasn't up. Compared to Xiangnan's dominance, Supreme Alliance was still going in circles. Qin Mo was the most obvious. In any of the previous matches, he had always been the most economical. After all, even Xiao Jing might not be able to achieve the same results as him in terms of maneuvering and positioning. But this time, he was second from the bottom. Shui Yaoyao's finances were at the bottom. Regardless of how one looked at it, it was clear that there was a problem with the combination. The wilderness is too important to Qin Mo, but Xiangnan is obviously trying to suppress him. From the start, they have been either attacking or harassing him. Lin Chintao was anxious. If this continues, Qin Mo's assassin is going to be useless. Without Qin Mo, Supreme Alliance won't be able to win this match. The sorcerer in the middle lane. Sigh, why isn't she helping Qin Mo? I really want to go up myself. Rao Rong remained silent. As a sorcerer, he could see Shui Yaoyao's flaws more easily than Lin Chintao. But at the same time, he understood that it wasn't possible for a newbie to play with a stream of consciousness. The combination wasn't something that could be done by just anyone. Supreme Alliance must have realized the problem as well. As expected, Qin Mo spoke. As he spoke, he didn't forget to clear the small beasts. His speed was astounding. Yao Yao, go to the bottom lane. Uncle, take the middle lane. All right. Yin Weao's hand speed was fast. As he swept through the wilderness, he forgot to switch to the small map in case of a surprise attack. Qin Mo was concerned about this as well. Be careful, he said. Just then, a person appeared from the bushes in the wilderness. It was Luoluo. Among all the long-range attacks, Luoluo's character was the most mobile. Similarly, it was a test of the player's hand speed and reflexes. More importantly, it was a test of one's gaming awareness. If she had appeared, Shui Yaoyao wouldn't have been able to freeze her. She was too mobile. That was why the shoutcaster had said at the start that Xiangnan's lineup was against Supreme Alliance. Compared to Supreme Alliance's old style, Xiangnan has their own strategy in choosing their characters. This is probably the ability of the champion team. They will do research in advance for every match. They're here. The shoutcaster lowered his voice and everyone turned to look at the screen. Luoluo rolled on the spot and jumped to a safe position. She pressed down on the sniper rifle and fired a shot in Shui Yaoyao's direction. A loud bang was heard. Shui Yaoyao's HP dropped by half. Yin Weao quickly retreated to prevent Luoluo from continuing to snipe him. However, to his surprise, it was not only Luoluo but also Xiao Jing who was hiding in the grass. Xiao Jing's ultimate skill was immune to all crowd control. In addition to his high speed, Shui Yaoyao was lifted into the air with a flick of his spear. Her rain spell was disrupted and she had less than a third of her HP remaining. Xiao Jing still wanted to move forward. Yin Weao controlled the mouse and blocked it. He only said one word. Go. In just a few seconds, no matter how fast Qin Mo's support was. Even if Qin Mo was fast enough, he could only prevent Shui Yaoyao from being killed a second time. But Yin Weao, who was surrounded by the three of them and had low HP, couldn't be saved. When the special effects of the K.O. sound rang out, every single one of the fans paused for a moment. Because they knew why Uncle Yin had died this time. With Uncle Yin's maneuvering, he could have escaped. But he allowed Shui Yaoyao to leave first. In just 10 minutes, Supreme Alliance had lost 2 lives. The media assumed that Yin Weio's death would cause discord between the fans. Just like Yun Hu and Lin Feng. But this time, no one attacked him. Everyone was looking at the screen. It was because they felt how much their idol cherished his teammates. Shui Yaoyao was the most guilty one. She opened her mouth and said, "I'm sorry." Yin Weiyao smiled. "In the later stages, you will be more useful than me. Don't think too much, with little captain around, the situation will be balanced." Shui Yaoyao replied, setting off again. In the past, she had always thought that she had trained her hand speed. But after this competition, she realized that she wasn't good enough in other aspects. She didn't know when to switch to the small screen and wasn't sure where to look. But Uncle Yin's maneuvering was smooth. It wasn't just Uncle Yin. Even Coco reacted appropriately at the right time. As for her, Shui Yaoyao moved her right hand. She might be the least skilled, but from now on, she couldn't be a burden anymore. "Yaoyao, pay attention to the bushes on the right, someone is there." Qin Mo's voice didn't change at all. "Coco, take a step back." "Yes." In an instant, Supreme Alliance changed their formation. The shoutcaster was shocked. The middle and bottom lanes have changed. The sorcerer isn't in the middle lane, this is really unpredictable. Even though it wasn't conventional, it wasn't going to be easy for Xiangnan to disturb Qin Mo's jungling. Because of Yin Weio's obstructions and skills, it wasn't going to be easy for Xiangnan to send 3 people over. 2 people could do it. But after fighting for half a day, they didn't manage to snatch the blue beasts and were almost stopped by Coco in the top lane. What infuriated Zhao Sanpang the most was that the moment he retreated, Qin Mo said, "Thank you for the jungling. Thank you for the jungling. Thank you for the jungling." These 6 words were like a 3-dimensional sound loop, ringing in his ears, causing Zhao Sanpang to almost spit out blood. But in the end, they weren't the ones who had helped Qin Mo because they were the ones who had taken down half of the blue beast's HP. So this was what Qin Mo had in mind. Shameless, too shameless. How could he use someone else's strategy to trick them? Qin Mo was indeed the ancestor of shamelessness. Attack the tower. Xiao Jing quickly adjusted his strategy. He also found that if they continued to fight like this, it wouldn't be the opponent's rhythm that would be slowed down, but theirs. Qin Mo was really something. Even if his hand was injured, he could still use such a strategy to deal with them. That was interesting, Xiao Jing gave a rare smile. When he appeared on the big screen, the fans of Xiangnan felt a sense of awe. Supreme Alliance seems to be in a better condition. Someone noticed the difference. Indeed. The other team members commented. Both Coco's maneuvering and the new sorcerers are on a whole new level compared to before. It seems to be related to their positioning. That's strange, their awareness has improved so much in such a short period of time. How can Supreme Alliance's members improve so much in a single match? That's impossible. Just as everyone was discussing, Rao Rao narrowed his eyes. Rao Rong, who was sitting in the corner, suddenly narrowed his eyes. He leaned forward, his gaze landing on the man who was controlling the mouse while tilting his head. "It's Qin Mo, what?" Lin Chintao watched the screen intently, not understanding what his captain was saying. Rao Rong's gaze remained unchanged. "Qin Mo is directing them. That can't be." When Lin Chintao heard this, his first reaction was disbelief. After all, an assassin's jungling was all about speed. Not only that, but they also had to constantly be on guard against other players stealing the jungling. Thus, they had to constantly switch between the minimap. This already required a lot of brainpower. If they had to switch between the top and bottom lanes at the same time, then how fast would they have to be and how powerful their thinking ability was? But reality proved that his captain was right. When he glanced in Qin Mo's direction, he was indeed directing. That wasn't all, the movements of his left hand were so fast that it was a blur, not to mention the movements of the mouse in his right hand. Coco, retreat. Second skill, aim. Qin Mo was wearing his headphones. His handsome side profile was illuminated by the light. He looked so noble and inviolable. He controlled the game character to pass through the wall while giving instructions in a calm voice. He looked so calm as though he was doing something normal. But anyone who played games would know that Qin Mo was the only one who could do this. The shoutcaster noticed it too. He gave the director a look, signaling for the camera to zoom in on Qin Mo very quickly. Qin Mo appeared on the screen. The audience could clearly see his thin lips moving. When they looked at his game view, the speed at which he switched between maps was so fast that they couldn't see clearly. On top of that, he was clearing the troops in the middle lane, reducing the pressure on Yin Wuyao. Finally, the troops returned to their original position, not allowing Xiangnan's troops to come over. No wonder he is the most valuable player in the esports scene. Qin Mo won this title because of his ability. With his command, Xiangnan's rhythm is obviously disrupted. He cleared the troops so quickly while directing at the same time. That's impressive. The shoutcaster didn't know what to say, but he could hear the admiration in his voice. Rao Rong didn't have much of a reaction. On the other hand, Lin Chintao sighed. Qin Mo is a pervert. This method of playing is very taxing. Rao Rong continued, but all these years, Xiangnan has only been playing high-end games and has forgotten the reason why Supreme Alliance has been known as the strongest team in the province for such a long time. A large part of it is because of Qin Mo's leadership and coordination. Lin Chintao widened his eyes. Captain, are you saying that Qin Mo has always been like this? Were you the one who quit for a year or was I the one who quit? Rao Rong sounded helpless. Qin Mo started out as an assassin, but in the past, he has always been a team controller. In order to coordinate with the team, he changed his best character, isn't that so? Lin Chintao grabbed his hair. I thought all-round players like you would like to play the team controller, so Captain, you are also, the assassin is Qin Mo's life. Rao Rong glanced at him. You haven't seen the Qin Mo from 3 years ago. With a sweep of his long sword, the 3 players from Xiangnan couldn't stop him. In the past 3 years, he has been playing the team controller in order to improve the team's ranking. It wasn't until Escapades appeared that he started to show signs of his past self. But in today's match, you saw his commanding ability. In fact, Xiangnan has already pushed him back to his previous style. If this continues, Qin Mo won't be able to beat Xiao in the later stages. Lin Chintao's heart sank as he listened to his captain's analysis. He knew that his captain had never made a mistake in his analysis of a battle. Although both sides were his friends, he didn't know why, but he felt that it would be too depressing if this game ended up like this. As expected, in the next second, the sound rang out. Once again, the music played. The tyrant of the jungle was killed by Xiao Jing. Before the Xiangnan fans could cheer, Lin Chintao stood up straight. Lin Chintao bolted upright, his hair standing on end as he hollered at the silver-haired youngster. Little Spade, what exactly are you doing? Where are your jungling skills? Where is the strength you used to shoot our tyrant? Are you still asleep? Lin Chintao's shout was too eye-catching. In that instant, it wasn't just the audience, but also the cameras and the team members turned over. It's Lin Chintao. The resentment in his words is too obvious. After all, the last time Supreme Alliance had fought against them, Escapades had snatched the kill gun too quickly. Speaking of which, he is encouraging Escapades. A good friend's way of encouraging is indeed different from others. Why did I see my Big Spade's back tremble just now? With Lin Chintao's volume, Big Spade probably heard it. With so many eyes on him, Lin Chintao regained his rationality. He sat down with a burning face and tilted his head. Captain, don't blame me for embarrassing myself. Rao Rong didn't reply. What else could he say at this moment? Fortunately, he was wearing a mask. The shoutcaster hadn't expected such a situation and tried his best to lead the crowd on the right path. With the tyrant's death, the economic disparity between the two teams widened. It seems like no one can stop Xiao Jing's momentum. It seems like Qin Mo alone can't stop Xiangnan's momentum. This will make it harder for Supreme Alliance to make a comeback. I have to say, the tyrant's kill was beautiful. Supreme Alliance's jungling skills are too far from Xiangnan's. The other teams hadn't said the word yet. Just then, the music broke the silence on the big screen. Only one line of words appeared on it. The Dark Dominator has been killed by Red Spade Z. Chapter 1004. Master. The shoutcaster stuttered. After all, he had just said that Supreme Alliance's jungle wasn't strong enough. Who would have expected that in the next second, Spade Z would kill the biggest boss in the jungle and successfully bring out a wave of flying dragons? The shoutcaster had encountered a player like Spade Z. This was a psychological barrier in his career. After a few moments of stuttering, he managed to smooth things over. Spade Z is indeed the king of the jungle, he's really hard to deal with. He's returning the favor. The spectators from the other teams narrowed their eyes. But how long has it been and Spade Z is already able to solo the king? Look at Spade Z's finances. A sharp-eyed person pointed out the data on the screen. Everyone was stunned. Since when was Spade Z's finances on par with Xiao Jing's? Under normal circumstances, when we talk about a person's hand speed, it doesn't just refer to speed, it also refers to the speed at which he can earn money. In the early stages of hero, it depends on who can earn more money. The richer you are, the better your equipment will be. But the most important factor is time. I don't know if you guys have realized, but Spade Z has his own way of playing in the jungle. Aren't they just normal jungling? No, it's different. What's different? I'm not sure about the specifics. Wait, let's watch the replay. For example, killing the king would definitely be replayed. Especially when it was so unexpected. When they switched to Spade Z's perspective, they realized that the youngster's jungling style was indeed different. He's using his second skill to move around and using normal damage to attack the monsters. How is he so fast? It was indeed fast. Everywhere Spade Z went, regardless of whether it was the monsters or the minions, the youngster's speed was inexplicably faster than the others. Spade Z's skill points seemed to be connected perfectly. It isn't a problem of the skill points. He knows what he can harvest with a normal attack. Then, he would always keep his second skill so that he can jump over the wall to save time. Regardless of whether he was escaping or choosing his next target, his speed and explosive power were maintained at their peak. Spade Z really brought his character to life, treating Xiangnan's wilderness as his own. He could come and go as he pleased. Xiangnan used most of their tactics to restrict Qin Mo, but they underestimated Spade Z. It's mainly Spade Z's jungling style. Why do I feel like I can't learn it? This jungling style looks a little familiar. Is that so? It's the first time I've seen such a jungler, and he's always avoiding Xiao Jing. I don't think it's a coincidence. Ah! I remember now. Where have I seen such a jungler before? Where? Indeed, there were people who were curious. Back then, when Qin Mo fought against the Xiangnan Three Gods, he used such a jungling style. Back then, even though Supreme Alliance was strong, the others were still a distance away from Xiangnan. However, Qin Mo managed to balance the gap. Back then, no one could stop Qin Mo. After his hand was injured, such a jungling style was never seen again in the esports arena. He didn't leave any empty moves, and with every step he took, he either increased his speed or dealt damage. His jungling speed was obviously 2 times faster than the others. I tried it before, wondering if I should learn from that match. In the end, I realized such a jungling style isn't something anyone can do. First, you have to have a map in your mind and you have to constantly change the map to analyze the situation. When the opponent isn't paying attention, you have to use the fastest method to deal damage. You also have to have precise positioning and fast hand speed. Most importantly, you have to have a strategy. I originally thought such a jungling style would never appear again, but I never expected to see it from Spade Z. Xiangnan miscalculated. They shouldn't just be defending against Qin Mo. Xiao Jing noticed the problem as well. He narrowed his eyes. Sanpang, keep an eye on Spade Z, alright. Zhao Sanpang led his team around the river, intending to stop Bo Jiu, who was about to head over. He didn't expect that he was ready to give the young man a horizontal slash. Seeing that the young man was about to reach his side, he suddenly jumped to the side, went to the bottom lane to collect a wave of minions, and wasted his big move for nothing. Captain, Little Spade is like a loach, he runs the moment he sees me. Run. Bo Jiu lifted her thin lips. Right at this moment, she suddenly turned back, using her second skill to pierce through the wall. Zhao Sanpang was lifted into the air, a series of explosive attacks. F***CK, Zhao Sanpang cursed. His left hand moved agilely, but he still wasn't able to avoid the attack. Fortunately, Goddess Luoluo had rushed over to help. If not, he would have lost his second HP. Little Spade, you're really too cunning. When Goddess Luoluo spoke, there was a hint of a smile in her voice. However, the sniper rifle in her hands wasn't slow at all. She attacked the silver-white figure ferociously. With such strong firepower and the sorcerer who came to help, many people's hearts were in their mouths. Many people's hearts were in their throats, thinking that Spade Z would be encircled. Bo Jiu didn't have much HP left. Ever since she had appeared, she hadn't returned home to heal. She had been farming in the wilderness. Right at this moment, a figure in white swept across the middle lane. With a sweep of his long sword, an electric formation rose. The 2 members of Xiangnan were trapped in the middle. They were slowed down and attacked. Only Qin Mo was able to set up such a formation. Come back. Xiao Jing wasn't late. Luoluo used her agility to move and dodge to the bottom of the tower. However, the sorcerer from Xiangnan wasn't as fast. He used up his flash, but in the next second, Spade Z turned around and lifted him into the air. Freeze. Qin Mo's voice was calm. Yes. Shui Yaoyao's skill was executed at the right time. The audience watched as the white figure leaped an inch forward. With a big move, Scar of the White Dragon. The silver light scattered and 2 words appeared in the middle of the screen. K.O. 2v2, the score was tied once again. Bo Jiu was the one who took the HP. However, Qin Mo's interference and Shui Yaoyao's freeze were crucial in this ambush. Xiangnan was fast. Especially Xiao Jing, who had come through the wall in order to finish off the low HP Spade Z. But it was obvious that Bo Jiu's alertness towards danger was extremely high. Hence, after the kill, she used her second skill to lift up and walk back, using the beasts to replenish her HP. Even Xiao Jing wouldn't head towards the wilderness where the 3 of them were gathered. Supreme Alliance fought beautifully this round. With the Flying Dragon as the trigger, it won't be easy for Xiangnan to start a battle in the wilderness. If they only look at the wilderness, they will definitely lose the defense tower. It won't be worth it. Escapades' Beast King played at the right time, bringing up the tempo. That's right. Just as they were discussing this, another sound was heard. The top player, Coco, was dead and Supreme Alliance had lost a defense tower. The score was pulled apart by another point. Supreme Alliance's fans widened their eyes, unable to understand why Coco had died when they had the upper hand. When they watched the replay, they realized a crucial point. Big Spade's finances were indeed comparable to Xiao Jing's, but the other Supreme Alliance members' finances were far behind Xiangnan's. Even Qin Mo was the same. This meant that Supreme Alliance hadn't shaken off their slow pace. The situation hadn't changed. Even if they had a similar number of players, it wouldn't change anything. Supreme Alliance's top lane is about to collapse, Rao Rong said. The moment Rao Rong finished, Xiangnan's players reached the second defense tower. Everyone knew that in most professional leagues, the collapse of the top lane meant the collapse of the entire team. The people who had been saying that Xiangnan didn't care about Escapades were now silent. Because they quickly understood one thing. Xiangnan's goal had been clear from the start. They wanted to suppress Qin Mo. After the joint attack in the middle and jungle, they wanted to destroy the top lane. From the start of the competition until now, Qin Mo had only fought one blue beast. Now that the top lane had collapsed, it was going to be harder to farm for blue beasts. An assassin without blue beasts was basically useless. It seems like the National League is about to end. You see Xin tapped the side of his face with his fingers and turned to smile at the person beside him. Hoshino, the person you like isn't bad, but Escapades doesn't seem to understand something. When a teammate can't keep up with his pace, he has to wait. Otherwise, he will still end up in failure. Hoshino frowned, glancing at the youngster who was moving the mouse. His fingers tightened. You see, Xin pointed at the screen. Qin Mo's speed is much slower than before. If I'm not wrong, there's something wrong with his hands. It was probably because of Yu Cixin's action. As a special guest and one of the top experts in Asia, the moment he opened his mouth, the cameras had already turned towards him. Even his words were transmitted to the audience through the equipment. There's something wrong with your hand. What does that mean? God blesses judgment is usually accurate, but this sentence. Does it mean that Almighty Qin's hand injury hasn't healed? Still not recovered? It can't be. Everyone saw Almighty Qin's moves just now. How could his hand not have recovered from that kind of speed? Lin Feng didn't believe it either, but when he turned over and saw Yunhu's side profile, his fingers tightened. Captain's hand injury really hasn't recovered. I'm not sure. Yunhu's voice was a little low. But this is the first time I've seen someone snatch the beasts from Captain. Captain's speed is indeed slow. Perhaps only Boss Feng knows what the problem is. Yunhu's words caused Baby Feng to turn towards Feng Yi. Bro, Captain, didn't he go to America to be healed? Feng Yi didn't speak, but that was precisely because he didn't speak. In an instant, Baby Feng understood what Feng Yi meant. Captain's hand indeed hadn't recovered. Bro, what exactly is going on? Feng Yi glanced at the elegant and aloof figure in front of the computer. His sitting posture was as reassuring as ever, as though as long as he sat there, he would be able to see hope. This had never changed ever since he joined the Supreme Alliance. At the start, he killed every god he met. No matter how low the situation was, he could turn defeat into victory. When he walked out from the thousands of silver lights, even his cloak would be swept up. With a loud bang, no one could stop him. After his hand injury, he was willing to give up his assassin character to cooperate with the rest of the team. If it wasn't for Qin Mo, would Supreme Alliance still be a strong team in the province? This was a question without an answer. At that time, after the Supreme Alliance lost, many players changed teams. Only Yun Hu was left, who could barely keep up with Qin Mo's speed. At that time, Yun Hu and Lin Feng weren't as independent as they were now. Especially Lin Feng, who was still a newbie. But because of that man, Supreme Alliance had never been able to come down from the clouds. Just how many things were on his body? Feng Yi couldn't finish his sentence, but there was one thing he had to say. In the previous finals, after Supreme Alliance lost, he was worried, especially when Supreme Alliance was caught in the internet storm. With the subsequent opponents, Supreme Alliance wouldn't have been able to reach the finals with just their lineup. Hence, he gave up on the last part of the treatment and chose to return to China. Before he came, the doctor had also told him to relax his wrist and not to use it as frequently as before. Especially the 3000 knife cutting, which tested the strength of his wrist, it was best not to use it again. Otherwise, his hand might be crippled. But in order for Supreme Alliance to win, he never thought about not being able to play games in the future. When Baby Feng heard the last sentence, his expression changed, his eyes turning red. Lin Feng stood up, grabbing a handful of hair. What do you mean by not being able to play games? On the surface, Feng Yi looked into his teammate's eyes. His hand has never recovered. At this moment, there was a commotion from the audience. There was a hint of confusion in the voice. Look, what's going on? When they heard the commotion, Lin Feng and the others looked over. When their eyes met the youngster, they were shocked. Someone asked in confusion, why did Spadesy stop? Chapter 1005. The youngster's pause caught everyone's attention. Lin Feng opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, the youngster pushed the keyboard to the right with a loud click. It was a clean sound, crisp and handsome. She used one hand to control her character while the other pressed onto Captain's wrist. Qin Mo paused, lifting his eyes to look over. Bojo didn't say a word, her fingers sliding over, landing on Qin Mo's keyboard. Well, what's going on? Is Spadesy helping Almighty Qin control his character? That should be able to alleviate some of the pressure on Almighty Qin's speed, right? But that doesn't make sense. How can a game be divided like that? Even though the keyboard can complete the movement, the mouse is needed to confirm the attack. How does Spadesy know how to do that? Confirming the attack can be done with the keyboard. Look at Spadesy's hands. The moment he mentioned it, the camera zoomed in on the youngster. Her hands were placed on two different keyboards. However, every time he raised his hand, it was so fast that one could even see the afterimages of his hands moving. Most people use their left hand to control the keyboard and their right hand to move the mouse. Spadesy was the first person in the professional league to be able to use both hands so nimbly. When he saw this, Feng Shang's eyes reddened even more. Even Yin Weiyao glanced over at them. When the two of them leaned against each other, it was as though they were saying, if there comes a day when you lose the sharpness that you are most proud of, then I would rather transform into a dragon-slaying sword and be covered in blood than see you fall from the altar. Little Captain's playing style. Even his thin lips were pursed. How much did his heart ache for Captain Qin? Yin Weiyao chuckled, his voice entering Coco and Shui Yaoyao's ears through the earpiece. We should work hard too. Yes, they should work hard too. For the man who had been carrying the entire team on his shoulders. Even if they couldn't win this match, they had to give it their all. When Zhao Sanpang from Xiangnan saw this, his mouth was agape. Xiao Jing paused, starting to attack again. Continue. Zhao Sanpang's voice was hoarse. Little Spade is trying his best to protect Qin Mo, this youngster is crazy. But deep down, he was filled with admiration. From the bottom of his heart, he felt excited to have such an opponent. Little Spade, even if you put on a pitiful act, we won't sympathize with you, Zhao Sanpang shouted, slashing again. Compared to before, his eyes were shining brightly. The youngster's finger landed and with a click, he turned left into the wilderness. His voice rang lazily. Who's suffering? Don't you understand? Brother Mo, don't be affected by this Xiao Sanpang. Do you want this blue dog? I'll help you. Xiao Sanpang. F***ck, why was he so touched just now? This guy was asking for a beating. At this moment, someone suddenly raised a question. Even though Spade Z is handsome, he can't compete like this. Indeed, it was impossible. The moment the youngster moved, the shoutcasters exchanged glances with each other before shifting their attention to the committee. Under such special circumstances, the committee would, of course, have a discussion. However, the discussion was extremely short. It didn't even take half a minute before they shook their heads at the commentator. The next second, a voice rang out. Warning to the Supreme Alliance members, please follow the standard procedure, this is an esports arena. The audience didn't need to think too much to know who the warning was. In reality, this wasn't a popular strategy. It wasn't just a test of one's hand speed, it was also a test of one's calculation and judgment. This way, the pace would definitely slow down. But Bojio would rather slow down and fight steadily. In the past, she had wanted to be fast. Now, she didn't have such thoughts. She wanted that person to be unscathed in front of her. The Almighty was supposed to be pampered and doted on. Bojio didn't want to retract her hand. Qin Mo tilted his head and looked at the youngster, his lips curving upwards. It was probably the gentleness of his entire life. You're not obedient now that you don't have the candy. Bojio's personality was like a fox, but she had a unique stubbornness. Have you forgotten what you promised me yesterday? Qin Mo's gaze deepened. You should be the one leading Supreme Alliance's rhythm. In that instant, Bojio stilled. Qin Mo moved his fingers, pushing the keyboard back. The audience watched as Spade Z's ID appeared on the screen. They were stunned for a second. The next second, she swiftly pressed the beasts. In the past, Bojio had been increasing her finances alone. Right now, Bojio might be slower, but she was able to coordinate perfectly with her teammates. Rao Rong, who was seated among the audience, broke into a sudden laugh. Now that Spade Z's only flaw is gone, it will be difficult for Xiangnan to suppress Supreme Alliance. Only flaw. Lin Chentao wasn't aware of Little Spade's flaws since her name struck fear in everyone's hearts. Rao Rong pointed to the side. Rao Rong pointed to the side. In the past, Spade Z was too fast. Sometimes, an assassin would be too fast and would be separated from the back line. When the teammates wanted to support him, they wouldn't be able to move at the same speed, which was the biggest disadvantage in a team battle. But now, Spade Z has learned how to focus his teammates' attacks during a solo battle. His speed isn't fast or slow, and his speed is just right. An assassin with high damage might be strong, but on top of that, an assassin who can understand his teammates and guide them accurately is even stronger. Spade Z doesn't just have Qin Mo's strategy, he has other skills. Hero has never been a solo game. It was as though Rao Rong's words were coming true. The team started on the road. The experienced north of Yin Mountain came to support in time. Even Shui Yao Yao used her teleportation skill to release a rain spell, successfully taking down one of their opponents. The audience could sense something different about Supreme Alliance. Compared to before they entered the arena, no, it should be said that compared to before, they were different. Be it their technique, hand speed, consciousness, or their teamwork. This battle team had become even stronger. The score was pulled back. The top lane, which was on the verge of collapsing, was saved in time. The tempo was now in Supreme Alliance's favor. This was the first time Xiangnan had fought for more than half an hour and it was still a draw. In the previous matches, they had pushed to the city center in less than 40 minutes and the number of kills wasn't even. Besides, Xiangnan rarely used their full lineup. Today, it was the complete opposite. Those who didn't understand games stopped in front of the big screen in the mall because of this match. Perhaps, the things that moved us and made us stay were not because of whose skills were better. Instead, it was because of this exciting match that no matter what kind of situation they were in, there would always be someone by their side. If they won, they would rule the world with them. If they lost, they would make a comeback with them. It was as though they would become braver with their presence. Never abandoning or giving up, this was probably what youth should be like. Not a bad match. While his son was immersed in front of the screen, a father laughed. It's similar to when I watched the women's volleyball team. But what you have to learn isn't how they play, it's their attitude towards life. Do you understand, rascal? Time trickled by. Originally, they thought the advantage was in Supreme Alliance's favor. But after 3 minutes, another line of words appeared on the screen. Another line of text appeared on the screen. The Shadow Dominator has been killed by Team Blue's Xiao Jing. Whoever took down the big boss of the jungle would be able to use the Flying Dragon to assist. The Shadow King could be killed many times and as long as the game continued, it would keep appearing on the map. But in the later stages, the Flying Dragon's assistance would bring more benefits to the team. Now that Xiao Jing had killed the Shadow King, the pressure was back on Supreme Alliance. That wasn't all. His big move successfully took away Coco's life, pulling the score apart once again. Supreme Alliance wanted a team battle but it was obvious they didn't have the advantage. This time, the top lane is really collapsing. There was no chance of salvaging it. No matter how good Spade Z is, he won't be able to carry it. Qin Mo is being suppressed in this match. That's right, the middle lane has collapsed. Qin Mo hasn't developed and his hand injury is real. The score has been pulled back again and again. On the surface, there doesn't seem to be a winner but in the end, Supreme Alliance will definitely lose. After all, there is a difference in the team's finances. If Qin Mo can't get up, everything will be in vain. If it had been any other team, Supreme Alliance might have had a chance of winning. But it wasn't any other team, it was Xiangnan. The defending king for 3 years. Beauty Luo's sniper cannon came up and showed off. When the team battle started again, even Little Spade lost her life. But before she died, she managed to bring Xiao Jing away. But no one could guarantee that she wouldn't be so lucky the next time. Supreme Alliance wasn't the only one who had grown in this match, Xiangnan was also strengthening. But everyone knew that Spade Z was the first person to be able to bring Xiao Jing away in a team battle. After the two of them revived, they dashed out. During the middle lane battle, Spade Z showed off her 3 skills. She used her second move to attack the sorcerer. When she was at half HP, she turned back and the others chased after her. But at this moment, the youngster moved her mouse and changed her direction. She jumped back and used her big move on Xiangnan's sorcerer. KO. Beautiful. Even the players from the other teams couldn't help but give a thumbs up for this wave of maneuvering. Especially when the 2 Xiangnan players tried to stop Spade Z, she leaped to the side and leaped over the wall, returning to her own jungle. The tank player from Xiangnan sped over. Since Spade Z only had 1 HP left, he could kill her with a big move. But where was she? The player frowned. Usually, when players were low on HP, they would want to run to safety. The faster they ran, the better. It was a human instinct. But it was obvious that the youngster wasn't running. Everyone watched as the figure hid in the bushes. She didn't return to the city and seemed to be waiting for something. Spade Z is waiting for his big move. That can't be, Big Spade is trying to counterattack. He's a tank with thick skin. Let's watch. Everyone was nervous, especially when the tank player from Xiangnan was about to reach Spade Z. Everyone held their breaths. The tank seemed to have realized something. He was about to attack the bushes when a silvery white figure jumped out. A silver-white silhouette jumped out just like that. First, the second skill sent him flying, followed by a critical attack. Right at this moment, everyone saw the long spear in the youngster's hands. The silver gleam flickered, and every time she attacked, it was obvious that the spear wasn't an ordinary weapon. No one had expected Spade Z to have such an equipment at the later stages of the game. The moment the armor was activated, the white dragon was in her hands. Even the footprints on the ground looked like the shadow of a dragon. It was extremely cool. But everyone felt that Spade Z wouldn't be able to kill the tank with just that. The difference in HP was too huge. Even if Spade Z used her lifesteal, it would still take a lot of effort. But right at this moment, the youngster moved her mouse and retreated. Another figure suddenly appeared behind her, using a sword as a formation, trapping the Xiangnan player in the middle. She wasn't just waiting for the big move, she was also waiting for Qin Mo. When the time was right, the youngster would go up and use her second move to attack. The earth-shattering music started playing again. Double kill. Double kill with half HP. It seemed like a long time, but in the game, it only took a short 10 seconds. Spade Z's maneuvers were really amazing for Xiangnan. The number of kills caused an uproar in the crowd. But before the youngster could return to the city, a silver light shone from the jungle on the upper side of the middle lane. KO, double kill. 3 kill. Sound effects came one after another, like ice water falling from the sky, extinguishing Supreme Alliance's newfound enthusiasm. 3 kill. It didn't just mean that Coco, Uncle Qin, and Yao Yao had died twice, it also meant that Xiao Jing was starting to become unstoppable. This is Xiangnan's true lineup. The next 5 minutes will be crucial. Rao Rong's voice was calm. If Supreme Alliance can't hold on for the next 5 minutes and Qin Mo hasn't recovered by then, even if Spade Z can balance the tempo, she won't be able to stop Xiao Jing. He is already at his peak. Rao Rong wasn't the only one who noticed it. The other teams that had crossed hands with Xiangnan could all see it. This time, Supreme Alliance probably wouldn't have a chance to turn the tables. After all, Qin Mo wouldn't be able to. However, just as this thought surfaced, someone stood up, his eyes filled with disbelief. Someone stood up, his eyes filled with disbelief. Look at Almighty Qin. Chapter 1006. It was probably because that person's voice was too excited, and after hearing this sound, he immediately turned around. Even the shoutcaster shifted his gaze towards Qin Mo's character, much less the people sitting beside him. The announcer reacted quickly, immediately switching to Qin Mo's perspective. The character on the big screen was enlarged, along with the 3 wild bosses. 3 monsters. Almighty Qin is fighting 3 monsters at once. F***CK, 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 I can't take it anymore. That's so cool, how did he do it? Everyone who played the game knew that killing bosses in the Blue Baba Wilderness to gain experience was basically done solo. But now, Qin Mo was fighting 3 monsters at once. Other than the Blue Baba, there were 2 other small monsters. F***CK, how did he do it? That was what everyone wanted to know the most. They looked at the handsome sweep that was completed in a few seconds. It was a godly skill in positioning and damage output. Wherever the longsword passed by, a silver light would shine. Even the figure in the white robe was like a sharp sword that was unsheathed, the beautiful brilliance rising from the screen. The three wild monsters fell almost at the same time. The audience's expression seemed to be enchanted, they were all stunned. He can fight in the jungle like that? Someone couldn't help but ask. After all, everyone was a gamer, but it was rare to see three wild bosses fighting together. The shoutcaster knew that the most important thing now was to answer the audience's doubts. He reached out and pressed the microphone in front of him. It's not impossible to fight three wild bosses at the same time, but very few people can do it. Let me explain the theory here. Mo should have attacked each of the wild bosses, then used the aggro value to make them run away from their original positions and gather in one direction. We can take a look at the position Mo was standing at on the map. This position is very particular, it can't be any more or less. This isn't just a test of a person's positioning, but also his familiarity with the jungle map. Oh right, there's also his hand speed. Other than these, he has to calculate his moves. Mo's electric formation was placed directly in the middle of the three wild bosses, this created a chain of aggro control. When the three wild bosses are electrocuted, they won't return to their original positions. Then, he followed up with a sword formation move, instantly killing the monsters. From what you've said, you can do it too. The other commentator couldn't help but laugh. The shoutcaster shook his head. He has practiced, but it's too difficult to do it. His maneuvers are unbelievable, he managed to deal such damage with a hand injury. Xiangnan should be thankful that he met Mo after his injury. Listening to the shoutcaster's words, Mo's fans who had liked Mo for many years were the most moved. Because they knew very well how unstoppable the person sitting in front of the computer and moving the mouse was. Mo is waking up. This was the first thing Rao Rong said when he saw the screen. When Lin Chintao turned to look at him, he realized that his captain was clearly different from before. His face and clenched fists were too similar to the person he had seen in the past. Back then, he was just like this, his eyes gleaming. Just by standing there, he could make people yearn for him. Sure enough, even if the captain didn't participate in this match, it was still very important to him. After all, it was a battle between Mo and Xiao Jing. Interesting. Yu Cixin supported his chin with his fingers, a meaningful smile forming on his face. Farming three beasts at the same time. Hoshino tilted his head, his expression unchanged. You seem to have been practicing this recently. Yu Cixin met his gaze devilish. I already know how to do it. Mo's hand is injured. Yu Cixin arched a brow at Hoshino's words. That's why I said it's interesting. Even with a hand injury, he was still on par with him. Mo was indeed a person that people wanted to challenge, but it was a pity. It was all temporary because he wasn't sure if his hand would be able to compete in the future. Supreme Alliance's situation is about to turn. Hoshino's eyes were filled with a smile, like a gentleman. If they use this method to farm the beasts, they will be able to overtake their opponent in terms of finances. As though to prove Hoshino's words, within a short minute, Mo became the third tallest person in the room. He was the highest after Xiao Jing and Bojiu. The screen was still following Mo. Everyone watched as he started farming beasts. It was the opponents. Right at this moment, Xiao Jing darted over. Everyone assumed that Mo, who was at half HP, would be attacked. But in the next second, Mo jumped back to the river, heading straight to the middle lane to help the team. F***CK, Almighty Qin's maneuvers are amazing. That was what the audience saw on the surface. But the professional players saw the essence. Mo's focus wasn't on farming beasts, he was using his big move. As soon as he finished his sentence. On the screen, the white figure darted past the line of soldiers, his long sword sweeping across. The sky was filled with brilliance, three swoosh 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 swoosh. First kill. Double kill. Triple kill. A total of 3 kills. He only had half a tank of HP, but he managed to take down 3 enemies. 3,000 knife cutting. These 4 words were like medicine that made their blood boil, appearing in everyone's heart at the same time. But the real 3,000 knife cutting wasn't over. The electric formation was set, the line of soldiers cleared, the long robe fluttering, leaving only a dragon and phoenix in the human world. But Qin Mo's situation was unavoidably dangerous since his HP was low after the fight. The sorcerer could take his head with one big move. But just as the formation was about to land, Qin Mo used his second skill and jumped back to the starting point. No one could even touch him. D***it. Xiangnan's sorcerer didn't want to describe his feelings, he felt as though he had been showcased. They couldn't even catch him. The atmosphere was filled with deafening cheers because of Qin Mo's maneuvers. But right at this moment, someone jumped out from the bushes. It was Xiao Jing, his long spear stabbing forward. Bo Jiu was far away and couldn't come over to help. The others couldn't match Xiao Jing's speed. Moreover, after killing Qin Mo, he used his second skill and jumped back to the defense tower. A voice came over. You won't die just like that, you won't bleed after your third kill. Plotting against me. Qin Mo released his mouse, his lips lifting as he waited quietly for his revival. Zhao Sanpang had revived earlier than him. He rode out on his horse and slashed down with his blade, not forgetting to quarrel. Compared to you, our leader has fewer tricks. Let me ask you, do you have the ability to fight me one-on-one? Qin Mo gripped the mouse once more, his expression calm. After the competition, I'll fulfill your wish to be slaughtered. F***ck. Zhao Sanpang felt that it was fine if he had a lot of tricks up his sleeves, but he was so difficult to deal with in a quarrel. Xiao Jing tilted his handsome face. Watch the wilderness, he's about to rise. There was no need to think about who he was. Everyone knew. Everyone was speculating what would happen if Qin Mo's hand wasn't injured. Even Bo Jiu was thinking about it. But compared to the others, Bo Jiu knew that using the 3,000 knife cutting was a waste of his hand. Outside the arena, Feng Yi furrowed his brows, his eyes filled with worry. If young Master Qin did this, he might not be able to play in the future, but that wasn't the case. He wouldn't be able to defeat Xiangnan. That was why he was betting his entire esports career, for the glory his team had been striving for all these years. Lin Feng wasn't dumb, he could tell. His throat was dry. Captain, Feng Yi remained silent. Lin Feng stood up abruptly, clenching his fists tightly. Brother Feng, I remember when I first joined the team that Supreme Alliance is different from the other teams. If you feel that this competition is driven by benefits, you can choose to forfeit. We're not going to continue this competition. Captain's hand will be crippled if we continue fighting. Feng Yi froze. He reached out and pinched his glabella. Let me think about it. More than half of the team members have to agree to forfeit the competition. That's the authority. Count me in. Yunhu placed the mineral water bottle down, glancing up. Me too. It was Feng Shang's voice, firm as a rock. It wasn't just the 3 of them, even the team members sitting in front of the computer felt the same way. Hence, at that moment, Coco, Shui Yaoyao and even Uncle Ian turned to glance over. Feng Yi watched the group of people in front of him. He knew better than anyone else how much effort they had put in for the National League. His younger brother, the one who didn't even dare to say a word in front of outsiders, went to the internet cafe every day to help out. He wanted to familiarize himself with the playing style of more people in the game, and thus improve himself. Yunhu and Lin Feng had waited for 3 whole years. For the past 3 years, the two of them had been training extraordinarily hard for the sake of entering the National League. In reality, Lin Feng was not very talented in this aspect. He was clearly a very lazy person, but he persisted on this matter for 3 years. At that time, Qin Mo had been recuperating and Supreme Alliance hadn't even entered the National League. He had been the one who had hung his head down unwillingly, swearing that he wouldn't be so useless the next time. But in these 3 years, even though Supreme Alliance had entered the National League, they had stopped there. During this period, they had been ridiculed and attacked by anti-fans. These so-called anti-fans were people who wanted to use you to achieve their goals but realized that they couldn't achieve their goals. Hence, they turned from fans to anti-fans. The most serious incident was with Little Spade. Some people didn't like the internet because there would always be people on the internet who were unscrupulous. The deepest violence wasn't verbal abuse. It was people who said they liked you but harmed you. At that time, others didn't know, but as the manager, he knew. Whether it was his brother or Lin Feng, they just sat in the club and didn't touch the computer. They said, "I don't understand. Why am I still persisting? Even my love is like this." He had been dealing with the outside media. The consequences of having an illegitimate meal were always a chain reaction. He had been forced to run around to prove the truth of Supreme Alliance. Fortunately, no one had been defeated. Even after going through so much. They had been lost, they had been sad, and they had even given up on themselves. But in the end, they still stood in front of the public in their best state. Because their goal was to be the first in the National League. After losing so many times, they would work harder than others. They wanted to win. They wanted to win back all the glory they had lost. Today, the chance had finally come. But Lin Feng and Yun Hu. No, everyone, including Yin Weiyao who had waited for so many years, had decided to stop the competition and give up on this opportunity. They wanted to win the competition. But compared to the competition, the captain's hand was more important. The intelligent Feng Yi, of course, understood the meaning behind their gazes. "All right." Feng Yi put down his hand and smiled like a prince. "Since you insist." He walked toward the organizing committee. Feng Yi was still the same, the director of Supreme Alliance in a suit, full of business skills. Everyone said that no one would be able to gain an advantage from this person. Supreme Alliance had been able to go so far because of Feng Yi. He was smooth and slick, dealing with all sorts of matters. At this moment, when he closed his eyes, he could recall the arrogant youngster from back then. He had reached into his pocket with one hand and tossed a card to him. "Form the team, we will be the National League champion this year." Seriously? Feng Yi shook his head, a smile on his lips. He had never told this group of people. They had already shown him what a National League champion should be like. Everyone watched as Feng Yi walked towards the committee, but they didn't know what he was going to do. But at this moment, the director of Supreme Alliance was going to the committee. Just this piece of information was enough to divert the attention of the audience. The camera couldn't be shifted away, but the two commentators looked at each other after seeing this scene. They had a feeling that something special was going to happen in the match. At this moment, they had a vague idea of what was going to happen. Lin Chentao didn't understand. What's Feng Yi doing there now? Supreme Alliance will probably give up on the competition. Rao Rong's gaze had never left Qin Mo. At this moment, he broke into a smile. Sometimes, I have to admit that even though Feng Yi likes to earn money, he isn't stingy when it comes to Supreme Alliance. Lin Chentao frowned. Give up on the competition. Supreme Alliance is in a good state. If this continues, they might win. If this continues, Qin Mo's hand might be crippled. Rao Rong's words caused Lin Chentao's eyes to widen. Was that the case? This should be the decision of all Supreme Alliance members to give up on the competition. Lin Chintao finally understood, turning towards Lin Feng who had just stood up. Supreme Alliance was indeed a team that people wanted to join. Chapter 1007. It was just a way to end it. Wasn't it a pity? Lin Chintao's eyes followed Feng Yi's figure to the committee. He saw that Feng Yi was about to speak to the person in charge. There was a loud click. The youngster in front of the computer pressed down on his wrist for the second time. But this time, Bojiu didn't use one hand to relieve his stress because it wasn't allowed by the competition rules. "Brother Mo, do you trust me?" This was the young man's voice. It was light and deep, and it was transmitted to everyone's ears through the earphones. "I do." Two words were Qin Mo's answer. His deep gaze landed on the youngster before returning to his wrist. Bojiu pressed down on his hand, her gaze focused. "Just as you said, I will control Supreme Alliance's tempo. I will beat Xiao Sanpang until he calls me daddy. Don't worry." Qin Mo watched as the youngster spoke seriously. Her silver hair was messy and she was wearing the earpiece. Qin Mo suddenly relaxed his grip. All right. What was he talking about? Xiao Sanpang raged. Who was going to call him daddy? He realized that Little Spade wasn't going to let him off easily. Let's see if he doesn't chop him up. With that thought in mind, the Xiangnan team rushed out. Bojiu tilted her head, her silver hair covering her face. She was looking in Feng Yi's direction. Feng Yi paused. When he met her gaze, he broke into a smile. Was she telling him not to move? The person in charge glanced at Feng Yi, arching a brow. Is there anything on Supreme Alliance's side? No. Feng Yi's smile was appropriate. Even though the committee members were confused, he just stood there and didn't say anything about forfeiting the competition. Everyone knew Supreme Alliance was in a disadvantageous position. Their finances couldn't keep up. Moreover, there was only one defense tower left in the middle lane. It wasn't easy to control the tempo of the match. Besides, they had Xiao Jing, the man who never heaved a sigh of relief. In Hero, there was an indisputable rule. The person in control of the wilderness was the person in control of the entire game. Hence, Xiao Jing had never given up on farming. He didn't give Supreme Alliance a chance, suppressing them under the tower and preventing them from coming out. This was already an advantage. A new wave of team battles gathered in the middle lane as the match heated up. At this time, there were only a few defense towers left on both sides. Other than Xiao Jing, Luoluo, Bojiu and Qin Mo. Everyone had already died twice. If he died again, he would be disqualified. Hence, this three-man team battle was bound to begin. Everyone's skills were excellent. But it was obvious that Xiangnan's attack speed was too fast. They were so fierce that even though they were standing under the defense tower, Supreme Alliance didn't dare to let their guard down. Moreover, they still had troops. The audience clenched their fists nervously, feeling that Supreme Alliance was going to collapse in this round. Sometimes, one's intuition was just that accurate. Xiao Sanpang's ultimate skill interrupted Yao Yao's rain spell and took away half of her HP. With Xiao Sanpang's attack, the tank leaped forward and squatted on Shui Yao Yao's body. Goddess Luo moved, lifting the sniper rifle and firing at Shui Yao Yao. Blood filled the air, the screen in front of Shui Yao Yao turned gray. Supreme Alliance was really going to lose. Chapter 1008. Shui Yao Yao's death caused some of the fans to feel conflicted since she was the one dragging the team down. Someone patted their shoulders, allowing them to take a closer look. Some of the fans then realized that Shui Yaoyao had died because she had blocked a big move for Yin Wuyao. Otherwise, Yin Wuyao would have been the one to be eliminated. In that instant, the crowd couldn't describe their feelings. On the screen, Supreme Alliance's 5 members had been reduced to 4. This meant that from now on, it was no longer a 50-50, but a 40-50. At this point, everyone realized that there was indeed a problem with Qin Mo's hand. If not, his wrist wouldn't have been so swollen. Even so, he didn't let go of the mouse. He coordinated with Yin Wuyao's operation, setting up an electric formation to fend off Xiao Sanpang, who was about to rush in again. When an ordinary person's wrist was injured, even typing would hurt, let alone playing games. But Qin Mo's maneuvering and positioning were so precise that it was admirable. Everyone's gaze shifted to his face. That handsome face was now drained of all color, and even his lips were pale. But even at this moment, his voice was still calm. "Coco, return to the city to replenish your HP," he replied and retreated. Qin Mo turned, taking over his position. Someone frowned. "Doesn't his hand hurt?" "It can't be, you can tell from his expression." But Supreme Alliance can't hold on much longer, the middle lane is about to collapse. Indeed, with one less member, how could they withstand the concentrated firepower of 4 opponents? 4 people. What about Xiao Jing? Just as the director realized the problem, he switched the camera angle. Everyone looked at the screen with a change in their gaze. Almighty Xiao is fighting the Beast King. The team attack on the middle lane is to prevent the Supreme Alliance members from coming out and to buy time. There are only 4 Supreme Alliance members now. With Xiao Jing fighting the Beast King and the Flying Dragon support, Supreme Alliance won't have a chance to turn the tables. The Beast King has less than 1/6 of his HP left, the outcome is set, but at that moment, a figure suddenly appeared from the bushes behind. A silhouette suddenly leapt out from the bushes behind him. Jungler's Punishment, along with an ultimate skill, struck the Overlord. Spade Z. When people say this name. Bojio had taken the lead and killed the Beast King, seizing the Flying Dragon's assist. Xiao Jing narrowed his eyes and then lifted the man in front of him. He was about to kill him. On the screen, the silver figure used the second skill to flick to the right, pass through the wall, and jump into the middle lane. Xiao Sanpang glanced at the map. With a click of his mouse, he spurred his horse forward and slashed his long knife towards her. However, before the hilt of his sword could fall, the figure used another leap skill and jumped into the wilderness. However, Luoluo, who had a strong sense of the game, was already waiting there. She set up her sniper rifle and shot it towards the figure. On the screen, flames rose. The young man held onto the mouse and swung it forcefully to avoid the missile. His fingers tapped on the keyboard rapidly and his body moved like the wind, allowing the flames to spread around him. He extended his long spear forward and the traces of the spear fell to the ground like a dragon's roar. Everyone in Xiangnan, including Xiao Jing, could only watch as the figure snatched their Beast King and successfully leaped back into the city. There was nothing they could do. In other words, even if the 3 almighties of Xiangnan worked together, they wouldn't be able to stop the youngster in the wilderness. All the Supreme Alliance fans were in a frenzy. After all, Qin Mo was the only one who could do this. But now, they saw the second one, Spade Z. Xiao Sanpang watched as the Flying Dragon soared into the sky, cursing at the back of his throat. Little Spade really treated the wilderness as his own home, didn't she? The match that seemed to be ending started to take a turn after Spade Z snatched the Flying Dragon. But it was only for an instant. Since he didn't need to fight the dragon, Xiao Jing went to the middle lane to help the team. With a second skill, he sent Coco flying. Xiao Sanpang turned back and slashed. In that instant, the Supreme Alliance's screen went dark. 3 versus 5. without the sorcerer team control and long-range attackers. Even with the help of the flying dragon, Supreme Alliance couldn't continue fighting. The last defense tower in Supreme Alliance's middle lane was about to be destroyed. Everyone stood up involuntarily. There was another K.O. sound. Yin Wuya was trapped in the defense tower. Luo Luo rolled to the side and set up her cannon to attack. This caused the situation to sink further into the abyss. 2 versus 5. This meant that Supreme Alliance was only left with Qin Mo and Bojiu. The entire Xiangnan team was there. The flying dragon could hold on for a few seconds, but without the flying dragon, what would happen? How could the two of them fight against the 5 of them? Moreover, Qin Mo's hands couldn't take it anymore. Just as everyone thought Supreme Alliance was going to defend, the youngster moved her mouse. She leaped over the wall and jumped to the right. No one could see clearly how she did it. They only felt that her fingers were moving at a frightening speed. Luo Luo knew that it was directed at her. She rolled instinctively. Zhao Sanpang leaped forward, wanting to give the youngster a critical strike. Xiao Jing did the same. But when he and Xiao Jing attacked, they realized that the youngster in front of them had instantly moved behind them. The person in front of them seemed to be a shadow. Everyone widened their eyes. Did I see wrongly? Why did I feel as though there were 2 spades in that instant? No, I saw it too. That's weird. Is it a clone technique? That's impossible. Little Spade's character doesn't have a clone technique. It's his maneuvering. One of the professionally sports players standing at the side trembled violently. The clone appeared because of Spade Z's maneuvering. His superhuman hand speed, coupled with his precise positioning, and even the use of the surrounding environment, were all controlled by him. F***CK. This was the first thought that flashed through Zhao Sanpang's mind. But before he could retaliate, a figure flashed behind them. The silhouette flashed behind them and stabbed at Luo Luo, who didn't have much health left. KO. Xiangnan sorcerer reacted immediately. But when he activated his big move, he realized that the person had leaped back into the defense wall. Initially, everyone thought that was the end. Xiangnan sorcerer thought so too. But unexpectedly, in the next second, the figure leaped back, the long spear piercing the sorcerer's body. Without his big move, the sorcerer was vulnerable. In addition, Spadesy held a silver-white long spear in her hand. When the white dragon landed, the screen was filled with splendor. Very quickly, the special effects of the game started playing again. Double kill. But this time, Spadesy didn't manage to leap back. Because Xiao Jing had sent her flying into the air. At this moment, Zhao Sanpang reacted. He raised his sword, about to land on Spadesy, who didn't have much HP left. The audience couldn't bear to watch this scene. But at this moment, the white robe fluttered and the sword formation was activated again. Everyone from Xiangnan was slowed down by the electricity, including Zhao Sanpang. In front of the computer, the youngster moved the mouse. This time, Bojiu didn't jump back. Instead, she jumped behind Zhao Sanpang, to the right. What is he trying to do? Very quickly, the audience had their answer. He was at the edge of the electric formation. The youngster's fingers were tapping on the keyboard. Her speed was so fast that one could see the afterimage of her movements. Her godly movements looked as though she was widening the distance between them, but in reality, she had turned around and sent Zhao Sanpang flying. That kind of killing scene, the special effects that came out were dazzling. No one could even understand how the youngster moved. It was too fast, so fast that the shoutcasters didn't even have time to react. The numbers on the screen were broken by the sound effect once more. Double kill. Xiao Jing was still being restrained by Qin Mo. When he heard the sound, he wanted to dash towards the youngster. Bojiu turned. After sucking the blood, she didn't seem to have any intention of keeping her gun. A white dragon roared, striking the tank trapped under the tower. Coupled with Qin Mo's damage, everywhere the spear went, it was all reverse scales. Of course, Xiao Jing wouldn't allow her to succeed. He leaped forward again, striking her. Xiao Jing seemed to have a cheat code. He seemed to know which direction Bojiu would jump in. He reached out with his long gun, sending her flying, cutting off her path back to the city. This time, Bojiu was left with 1/6 of her HP. On the screen, silver strands of hair fell, covering the youngster's eyes. Just as everyone thought it was over, Bojiu moved her fingers. Bojiu moved her fingers and dashed into the bushes in the wilderness like the wind. He can't hide like that, right? No, he isn't hiding. If he isn't hiding, then what is he doing? Waiting for his big move. The speed of the conversation couldn't keep up with the pace of the game. In that instant, everyone saw the screen in front of the youngster flash. The next moment, a critical attack was launched, hitting the tank who was left with 1 drop of HP. Then, she retreated. The white dragon landed on the ground, the sound effect playing again. Instantly, everyone stood up. Including Hoshino, who was originally sitting in the VIP seat. In that moment, his gaze was darker than anyone else's. He looked at the youngster on the field, a rare ripple in his eyes. Double kill. The tank wanted to squash Spade Z. But when he saw Spade Z's face, Spade Z. But he didn't expect the youngster to be real. She moved like a shadow, and when he got close, the youngster had already dodged his attack, closing in on him. In that moment, his hands seemed to have been shaken. He forgot how to dodge. When he regained his senses, he realized that it wasn't that he forgot to dodge but that he couldn't. That person's maneuvering wasn't something he could dodge at all. He could feel it, but his hands couldn't keep up. Be it the explosive force or the person's speed, it gave him unprecedented pressure. It was as though the person standing in front of him wasn't the new player king. Chapter 1009. But even so, the youngster didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. The crowd watched as the figure dashed towards Xiao Jing. Even Rao Rong was shocked. He's going to a head-on battle. With less HP than Xiao Jing, he was going to fight Xiao Jing head-on. Everyone in the audience was shocked by this scene. That was Almighty Xiao. Even though Spade Z was indeed powerful, could he really defeat Almighty Xiao? That's it, little Spade, that's it. Lin Feng's voice rang out. Everyone's gaze landed on the youngster. He had so little HP. But regardless of whether it was Shui Yaoyao, Feng Shang, or Yin Wuyao, the trust in their eyes. It made everyone's blood boil. But Xiao Jing was Xiao Jing after all. He retracted his fingers and followed up with a critical strike, breaking the youngster's rhythm completely. Then, he raised his spear, like a sharp blade, causing damage wherever he went. The youngster's HP dropped, and he started dashing towards the wilderness, looking like he was escaping in a panic. Everyone's hearts were in their throats, hoping that Big Spade would survive. But everyone knew that he was Xiao Jing, and he wasn't someone that anyone could get rid of just because they wanted to. The youngster seemed to be aware of this. With a move of his fingers, he jumped towards the wild tyrant boss. Xiao Jing followed closely behind. But the next moment, something unexpected happened. The Tyrant of Darkness was triggered, and in that instant, the damage landed on Xiao Jing, who was following closely behind. The Tyrant boss, whose aggro had been pulled, stretched out its claws, and the damage was unimaginable. At this moment, the youngster had already jumped into the safe zone. Xiao Jing, on the other hand, was caught by the claw. He was knocked out, and his HP dropped by half. On the screen, the youngster's figure froze. Then, he jumped back and bit the claw. While Xiao Jing was knocked out, he raised his spear and summoned a white dragon. 3,000 rays of silver light fell. In that instant, Xiao Jing dealt his own huge damage. There was a loud crash. The youngster collapsed in the sky full of silver light. The fearless figure in the wilderness couldn't get up anymore. The young man let go of the mouse in his hand, and his silver hair fell down. No one could see the expression on his handsome face. Just as some of the fans lowered their hands in regret. Another deafening sound effect appeared in his ears. 5. Kill. That's right, a pentakill. Other than the youngster, Xiao Jing was also lying beside the tyrant boss. In that instant, the cheers almost overturned the roof. Some people couldn't believe it and covered their mouths with their hands. That move just now, that was 3,000 knife cuts. Almighty Qin's 3,000 knife cutting. There were still traces of the white dragon's shadow on the screen, which were left behind by the spear. No one dared to believe it. To think that one day, someone could use Almighty Qin's electric array to execute the 3,000 knife slashes. All of the pro players knew that it was impossible. Unless this person could not only keep up with Qin Mo in terms of speed, but also accurate positioning and chemistry. It was said to be impossible because no one would be able to figure out his thoughts. But the youth did it. Snatching away the ruler, sending the DPS flying, counterattacking with low HP, 5 consecutive victories. This series of flips and miraculous maneuvers caused everyone's eyes to waver. Chapter 10:10. In a trance. Feng Yi felt as though he was looking at the noble god of war. Back then, Qin Mo had been like this too. Watching him play games was like watching a feast. All the blood that had once been extinguished seemed to be ignited at this moment. The audience in the arena was chanting the same name, Supreme Alliance. No one dared to say that Supreme Alliance would definitely lose this match. The reversal was like a miracle. And this miracle was brought about by the youngster. Xiao Jing's right hand didn't move away from the mouse. He looked at the countdown timer and said 2 words to Luoluo, defend. Everyone knew that this was the key for Supreme Alliance and also the key for Xiangnan. Luoluo had just revived and the rest had died 3 times. They didn't have the right to compete anymore. But it wasn't too late. After Luoluo revived, they still had a chance. This was the wish of every Xiangnan member. However, in the next second, a white figure broke their expectations. It was Qin Mo. Almighty Qin's hand is injured. Is he going to fight? The white figure with the dragon on the screen answered the question in everyone's mind. Luoluo waved the mouse. When she rolled out, the last defense tower of Xiangnan was gone. Qin Mo leaped over with the flying dragon and rushed towards the high ground. Luoluo narrowed her eyes. She lifted the sniper cannon and shot towards Qin Mo. As the sparks scattered, Qin Mo moved his right hand and raised his left hand. He tilted his body and dodged the cannon. He cut from the left, his long sword slashing across and setting up an electric formation. Luoluo's speed was reduced but she relied on her agility to roll to the right. She raised the sniper cannon again and with a loud bang, it hit Qin Mo's body heavily. It seems like Qin Mo's hand injury has affected his operation. There are 15 seconds left before Xiao Jing revives. Qin Mo's strong attack shouldn't be able to take him down. Even with the help of the flying dragon, it won't be easy to break through the defense of the high ground. Looking at Qin Mo's operation, he might be killed by Goddess Luo. The shoutcaster's words seemed to be coming true. In the next second, Qin Mo was left with less than half of his HP. Even if the wyvern was still there, it couldn't hide the fact that his control had deteriorated. The youngster, who was still waiting to be revived, suddenly turned towards Qin Mo's direction. Only then did he realize that the wrist that was holding the mouse was obviously swollen. In that instant, Bojiu tightened her grip on the mouse. She couldn't wait to revive and rush out. All the audience felt that it was a pity. This included the oldest group of people sitting in front of the internet cafe who liked to play online games. Everyone felt a wave of disgust in their hearts at the sight of such a lousy operation and his ID. After all, Qin Mo was different from others. It was the same for the fans of other teams. Almighty Qin won't be killed, will he? One of the Supreme Alliance fans asked the person beside him. No one answered. The atmosphere was oppressive. The audience watched as Qin Mo's HP decreased as he retreated. Goddess Luo didn't give up on this chance, rolling towards Qin Mo. Just when everyone turned their heads away, not wanting to watch this scene any longer, Yu Cixin stood up, his fingers gripping the railing in front of him. A sharp glint flashed past his eyes. Xiangnan fell into their trap. Fell into a trap. Chapter 10-11. The audience wasn't the only one who didn't understand Yu Cixin's words. Even the shoutcaster couldn't understand it. On the big screen, when Luoluo set up her sniper cannon, the figure in front of them suddenly disappeared. Everyone widened their eyes in disbelief. When they turned back to look at Qin Mo, he had actually reappeared at the edge of Xiangnan City. This is his first skill, rebounding. Lin Chintao's eyes wavered. Qin Mo did it on purpose, even his movement just now was to lure Goddess Luo out. Time is of the essence, the flying dragon alone wouldn't be able to push down the city. No, that's not right, that was his true movement. Even if there was a mistake, it was a mistake he made on purpose. The audience was at a loss for words. Could they imagine? The person who had been running at the front had suddenly returned to his original position, behind you, allowing you to chase him all the way, only to realize it was all part of his plan. Luoluo couldn't defend in time, there were only 5 seconds left before Xiao Jing's revival. Qin Mo seemed to have noticed it too. Without hesitation, he moved his long sword, the 3,000 knife cutting appearing once more, along with the flying dragon's assistance. He destroyed the crystal in the center of Xiangnan City. The glittering shards fell. Amidst the splendor, a man with a long sword in his hand appeared. His face was handsome, and his clothes fluttered in the wind. 2 large words appeared on the big screen, accompanied by an inspiring sound effect, victory. The screens in front of Xiao Jing's team dimmed. Even the word Xiangnan, hanging in the middle of the arena, was extinguished. Only Supreme Alliance's name was left on the screens. It was obvious what it meant. Feng Shang rushed out to hug Lin Feng. Brother Feng, we won, we won. Yunhu glanced at his empty hand, turning to Feng Shang. He reached out to pull Lin Feng over, hugging him. His meaning was clear, he was mine, carry someone else. Feng Shang didn't stutter anymore. Seeing Yunhu's expression, he changed to another person. Brother, we won, we won. Feng Yi was still looking at the screen, his pupils wavering. He hadn't recovered from the scene just now. If the media caught sight of his expression, they would definitely take pictures of it. After all, it was rare to see the smiling prince like this. But now, there was only that voice left in Feng Yi's ears. Victory! They really won. Cheers erupted along with the victory music. Lin Feng was probably so happy that he didn't know how to express his emotions. He tugged at his uniform and threw it at the audience. His smiling face was as bright as the sun. Even his teeth were white. He didn't care and reached out to hug Yunhu. Shui Yao Yao and Coco were still sitting in their chairs. Yin Wuyao seemed to be stunned for a moment, then he lowered his head and smiled, full of the charisma of an uncle. Lin Feng and the others had already rushed over. All the Supreme Alliance members stood in the same position, forming a beautiful scene. When the spotlight shone on them, they could even see the light dancing in their eyes. Over the years, from glory to defeat, this group of people had been ridiculed, looked down upon, slandered by anti-fans, and forgotten by people. Now, they could finally return to the position that belonged to the kings, the national champions. Even Xiangnan, who had lost, didn't say anything. Although Zhao Sanpang was unwilling, he could tell that he was blaming himself for not working harder. Goddess Luo stood at the side, lowering her voice. I'm sorry, I didn't expect Qin Mo to use such a move. I underestimated him. Even if his hand is injured, he wouldn't mess up his movements. Xiao Jing stood up, one hand in his pocket, the other reaching out to rub Goddess Luo's head. It's not just you, I didn't expect him to move like that either. Goddess Luo paused. It was obvious that she was still feeling down. Zhao Sanpang started to complain. Qin Mo has always been shameless, we just weren't as shameless as him. But he's still quite handsome. Goddess Luo raised her eyes. It was as if she was seeing the past him again. Zhao Sanpang was quite speechless towards his teammates. How did this person become a goddess in everyone's hearts? She always stood on his teammate's side and spoke. Even if he lost. It seemed like Xiangnan still maintained its demeanor and style. Even Xiao Jing was only downcast for a moment. When he led his team back to Supreme Alliance, he had already recovered his usual expression. Every team put in the same amount of effort. Xiangnan wasn't an exception. Their teammates would definitely be sad after they lost. But a loss was a loss. Xiangnan wouldn't find excuses for themselves. Xiao Jing glanced at Qin Mo's hand. The two captains brushed past each other. Xiao Jing's voice rang out. Xiangnan will definitely be the winner next year. Qin Mo's tone was calm. Qin Mo's tone was very calm. Although his noble side profile was pale, his aura did not dissipate at all. He was full of doubt. Zhao Sanpang didn't like to speak to him because of this. It was just 2 words, but it sounded arrogant. But they had indeed lost to Supreme Alliance. That was the truth. Xiangnan returned to the audience. The next step was the award ceremony. But at this moment, the youngster grabbed Qin Mo's right hand. With a handsome face, he said, Manager Feng will lead the award ceremony. Under everyone's watchful eyes, he brought the youngster out as though there was no one else around. He didn't seem to have any reservations at all. But even so, he dragged the youngster away. The youngster was dressed in a battle uniform with messy silver hair. He was unbelievably handsome. In that instant, Almighty Qin stilled. Just as he was about to say something, the youngster turned back with a sharp glare. Almighty Qin didn't say anything. Did he still look obedient? This was really a reverse CP, helplessly, the fans seemed to like it. They cupped their faces and cheered, showing off their love. Indeed, they were showing off their love. Even at such an occasion, they could leave early. The youngster didn't seem to have thought about how the media would view their relationship. It was the same for Almighty Qin. But the fans didn't know. Bo Jiu was angry. Extremely angry. But at the same time, she understood that no matter how painful his hand was, he wouldn't let go of the mouse. Even if it was for a second. Because he would always be carrying a team on his shoulders. But why didn't he tell her about the severe injury? Chapter 10-12. Bojo was still looking at Chin Mo's hand when she pushed him into the taxi. Right hand. It wasn't just the hand that held the mouse, it was also the hand that held the gun. Bojo couldn't say her thoughts out loud. She tilted her head and asked, "What's Dr. Chin's number?" Chin Mo sat at the back of the car, glancing at the youngster who was still holding his hand. He recited a string of numbers. The fans were right. The Almighty was exceptionally obedient today. The Chin family's family doctor was also an authoritative figure in the country. When she saw her private phone number ringing, she frowned. Unexpectedly, it was young Master Fu who called her after she picked up the call. Young Master Chin seemed to be sitting beside him. This was the first time Dr. Chin had encountered such a situation. Even if his young master was injured, he wouldn't give his private number to anyone. It was even more impossible for him to let someone else talk about his condition. It seemed like young Master Fu was indeed special to his young master. But when he heard the word hand injury, Dr. Chin placed the medical record down. "I'll be right there." Bojo had brought Chin Mo away in front of everyone. The one she should be worried about wasn't the reporters. It was He Honghua and Movie Queen who had disguised themselves to watch the National League. He Honghua had wanted to give her Joe a surprise. He didn't expect to witness such a scene. Moreover, the little girls beside him were saying things like, "So sweet, so compatible. So my almighty Chin is the one at the bottom. I really didn't expect it, Big Spade is indeed a handsome young man. What beauty." What did that mean? He Honghua was confused by the side. She turned to ask Movie Queen and heaved a sigh of relief when she saw Joe dragging her cold son away. After all, Mo was really willing to gamble both his hands for a competition. Fortunately, there was someone to take care of him when she wasn't around. Movie Queen was still thinking about how to reply to He Honghua's question without incurring He Honghua's disgust. Even when she had first discovered the relationship between the two kids, she had struggled for a long time before convincing herself to let go of some old beliefs. But she had been in the film industry for so many years and wasn't surprised by such things. But He Honghua was different. Which mother would feel good after seeing her son like this? But when he thought about it, it wasn't a good idea to keep hiding it like this. Hence, Movie Queen decided to be honest. She reached out to pat He Honghua's hand. "Sister He, this isn't a good place to talk. Let's go out first." He Honghua nodded and turned to look at the girls. She thought to herself that she really had a generation gap with these children. She couldn't understand what they were saying at all. From the looks of it, these people seemed to really like her Joe. That was enough. He Honghua almost wanted to ask someone to buy 10 boxes of ice water for these little girls. They were so excited that their throats were probably hoarse from all the shouting. But she also understood that if she did that, the media would say that her family was a nouveau riche who used money to show off. In the past, she had suffered a lot because of this, so she didn't want to cause trouble for Joe. When she saw these little girls again, she would thank them individually. The group of fangirls at the scene could never have imagined that they would miss their mother-in-law just like that. As for why it was a mother-in-law, because Big Spade was their husband. The fangirls had always thought of themselves as such. He Honghua listened along the way, widening her eyes at times. Movie Queen, who was experienced, chuckled. "It's nothing, that's how it is when you like someone. Our Cold Boys fans even said they wanted to bear his children. It's normal, it's normal." He Honghua thought, indeed, it's normal, but our Joe is a girl. Being called husband, the people's sister he met just now or CP fans. When there was no one around, Movie Queen broke into a faint smile, her expression serious. "Actually, there's something I haven't told you because I was worried that you wouldn't be able to accept it. But now that the competition is over and the two kids don't seem to have any qualms, rather than hearing it from the media, I might as well tell you. With that, the movie queen and paused before continuing, the two kids are together. Honghua froze. She wasn't dumb and quickly understood who movie queen and was referring to. But she had never heard her Joe's family mention it. Sister, could it be that you're mistaken? Our Joe is. Before Honghua could finish, movie queen and patted her hand. I know you want to say that Joe is a boy and so is Mo. How could they be together? But sometimes, feelings are like this. Sometimes, when you really, really like someone, you'll even ignore their gender. That icy son of ours will only be a little human in front of Joe. Big sister, he probably can't accept it right now. As a mother, I felt the same way before. But now, I want you to give these two kids some time. Take a good look at them and see if they can persevere on this path. If they don't separate after a long time, I think you can rest assured. I believe that they didn't do it on a whim, or that they're mentally ill. It's just that the person they met just happened to be a man. Honghua's mind was in a mess. She didn't have any objections to Sister Anne's words, but her Joe was a girl. If they were really together, Joe would have told her. Which meant that up until now, the Qin family still thought Joe was a boy. For the first time, Honghua felt that her method back then was a little stupid. She was so stupid that she might harm her Joe. There were some things she couldn't say. Once she said it, Joe's actions would become a lie. At this moment, Honghua turned back to look at the support team that liked Spadesy. There were some things that she couldn't see clearly. But now, Joe wasn't an ordinary person. The national champion, these 4 words meant that Joe had become a super popular esports player. Popularity could make people live in heaven, but it could also send them back to hell. The fact that Joe was a girl couldn't be known. What she was afraid of was that when the time came, these likes would turn into a flood. When that happened, she didn't need to think to know what would happen to her Joe. Or maybe her Joe wouldn't care about others, but she knew her own child. Joe cared about her teammates in Supreme Alliance. Movie queen and glanced at Honghua's face, unable to decipher her intentions. But she was sure that things didn't seem to be going smoothly. That was true. If things were going too smoothly, it wouldn't be real. It seemed like she had to help her son more. The competition's procedures had to be completed eventually. Qin Mo left. As the club's director, Feng Yi was indeed qualified to receive this award. Under the camera, the Supreme Alliance members were still as handsome as ever. Once everyone had left, Yunhu pulled Lin Feng, who was still smiling foolishly. Back and pressed him into the changing room. His voice was deep and low. You haven't forgotten what you said. Is it your home or mine? Lin Feng didn't know what to say. Lin Feng didn't have an excuse to hide anymore. He cursed softly. How can you do such things at home? Why can't you do such things at home? Yunhu arched a brow. The two of them were so close to each other that Lin Feng felt a little awkward, especially when their breaths hit his face. He averted his gaze and said, "What if my family sees us? Let's go get F***ck." When Yunhu heard this, he understood what he meant. He didn't want anyone to know about the situation between them, even if they had sex. He just owed him and had to return the favor. Yunhu clenched his fists, suppressing the tightness in his throat. He smiled. We'll do as you said, get F, remember to bring your ID and don't be so stiff. This time, you are willing, don't make it seem like I'm forcing you. With that, he let go of Lin Feng's shoulder. Indeed, Lin Feng didn't want to appear like a newbie. After all, he had bragged about his non-existent romantic past in front of Yunhu. He adjusted his jacket arrogantly, his voice calm. You don't have to remind me, it's not like I haven't driven F before. I forgot, this isn't your first time. Yunhu smiled, his fingers digging deeper. He could still remember how he had felt. When he had heard this person say that he had gotten off with a girl, which was why he hadn't returned home, his heart had ached terribly. That was probably enough. After so many years. It had always been like this. Perhaps it was really enough. Supreme Alliance had won. He could study abroad in peace. Even the decision to study abroad was just to forget someone. After graduating from university, that guy would definitely find a girl to fall in love with. If he stayed, he would definitely think of a way to snatch her away. Lin Feng probably wouldn't forgive him. They were no longer the youngsters they used to be. After a fight, that guy would bring the game console to him at night, hugging his shoulders and saying, "You're such a person, I'm just buying food for a girl, I just think she's pretty. But if you think I'm embarrassing us guys, I won't fight anymore." He still remembered that time when he had asked that guy, "If I fall into the water with your sister, who will you save?" That guy had grinned. "I'll jump and you save me, I don't know how to swim." The same question would definitely be asked differently now. Because Yun Hu knew that he had his own plans, and in his plans, he wasn't included. Long ago, when he had asked that person to study abroad with him. When that person had rejected him with a faint smile, he had known. "Huzi, you go. We want different things. I want to make money and marry a wife. Earn money and marry a wife." When Yun Hu turned, he clenched his fists. When he glanced up, he was already calm. He knew what he had to do. Qin family. This was the first time Dr. Qin felt so pressured as a doctor. It was mainly because of the silver-haired youngster who was watching him. Young master really treated him like a porcelain doll. Even though his young master's hand was badly injured, it wasn't to the extent where he couldn't even hold a glass of water. The youngster's long legs were bent on the bed, one hand holding the glass of water. The way she fed his young master was extremely gentle and domineering. What was going on? Dr. Qin was a bright person, he knew that his young master enjoyed such treatment the most. Hence, he didn't say anything, treating himself as though he was air. "Is it hot?" Bojo asked Qin Mo with her bright eyes. She didn't seem to realize that she was behaving like a fox lying in front of her master. She was extremely obedient, making him want to caress her messy, fluffy silver hair. Qin Mo's lips curved. "It's all right. Then drink the medicine." Bojo clipped the pill that Dr. Qin had prescribed and sent it towards Qin Mo's lips. Qin Mo frowned, turning towards Dr. Qin as though asking him if he didn't know that he hated taking such meaningless medicine. Dr. Qin shrugged, indicating that he couldn't do anything. If he didn't prescribe some medicine, that young Master Fu who was serving him would probably doubt his medical skills. Qin Mo looked at the pill that was inches away from him, not moving. Bojo seemed to have thought of something and said, "I understand." She stuffed the pill into her mouth, biting it with her teeth. Then she reached out to pinch Qin Mo's chin and kissed him. Dr. Qin was stunned by the scene. He had always thought that his young master was the one on top, but now it seemed like it wasn't the case. Qin Mo, who was kissed, paused for a moment. Then, he naturally accepted the pill. This was the first time he felt that eating such a disgusting thing didn't make him irritated. Instead, it was a little sweet. His lips were filled with the unique scent of a youngster. Qin Mo couldn't help but smile. On the other hand, Bojo regretted the moment she fed him the medicine. After all, they weren't like when they were young anymore. Back then, her pet didn't like to take medicine. It was all because of her that he caught a cold and had a high fever. His exquisite little face was covered with a fever patch and he kept coughing. No matter what Grandpa said, he wouldn't listen. He was arrogant like a little prince, but he didn't mention anything about taking medicine. She watched anxiously, climbing over the wall. She drank a mouthful of cough syrup and kissed him on the mouth. He probably hadn't expected her to be so unruly at that time. His little face was flushed with anger. He even asked her if she was a girl and if she knew that she shouldn't be so careless. In the end, he said forget it. He couldn't do anything to her anyway, but he couldn't let her hug him if he found out that she fed medicine to her other friends. At that time, Bojo felt that this person was really. He knew that she liked to hug him to sleep, but he still used this to pressure her. However, that night, he still agreed to let her sleep on his small bed. He held a book and told her a story. Unknowingly, his face turned red again. Anyway, how did the little cutie who liked to blush back then grow into such a black-bellied almighty? Chapter 10-13. Chi Nemo didn't know what the youngster was thinking about. He lifted the corner of his lips and pressed down on the youngster's waist. His voice was calm, and there was a hint of abstinence. Dr. Chin is still here. Even though I know you really want to push me down, you have to control yourself, understand? Bojo. She had just been feeding him medicine. Why did the Almighty's words change completely? Besides, what was wrong with the Almighty's hand? Why didn't he let her get up? As a very discerning family doctor, Dr. Chin knew that he should choose to disappear at this time. But his young master's other hand was in a serious condition. He was wondering if he should inform his boss and madam. She should also remind young Master Fu to restrain himself in some aspects. His young master's hand wasn't in a good condition. After Dr. Chin finished his diagnosis, he was about to say something when Chin Mo glanced over. Dr. Chin swallowed his words. Bojo was still asking, Dr. Chin, how's Brother Mo's hand? Dr. Chin smiled. It's not a big deal, but you have to be careful with your actions. Don't eat too much and drink more bone broth. I'll inform Madame Zhang later. Oh. Nothing serious. Bojo watched as Dr. Chin turned and smiled. As long as it's nothing serious. Dr. Chin packed his things and walked out. When he had been on the phone, he hadn't expected the youngster to find an excuse to follow behind him. The moment he hung up, he turned back to see the youngster smiling at him mischievously. As a doctor who saves lives, it isn't good to lie, right? Dr. Chin smiled faintly. As an esports almighty, it isn't good to eavesdrop on other people's conversations. What do you think, young Master Joe? Bojo nodded. Dr. Chin is right. Dr. Chin watched as the silver-haired youngster took a step forward. He smiled wantonly. Fortunately, I'm eavesdropping openly. Dr. Chin. Where's your shame? How is Brother Mo's hand? I hope Dr. Chin can tell me the truth so I can be more prepared. Bojo glanced at the person in front of her. Or perhaps, how confident are you in treating it? He was already stuck here. Moreover, he had called for the general to come back earlier. Even if he tried to play it down, the other party wouldn't believe him. In addition, in the past, young master didn't let anyone look after him. It wasn't easy for someone to get close to the young master. Now that the method was in place, it might be a good thing. Since young Master Joe has put it this way, I won't hide it from you anymore. Young master's hand is an old injury, and it's not easy to heal. The authorities in America have also said that young master's hand needs to be treated first and nurtured second. Ever since the start of the National League, the weight on his wrist has been getting worse day by day. I can only temporarily reduce the swelling on young master's hand and prevent it from worsening. If we really want to treat young master's hand, he can't touch a computer in the near future. We have to go to America to find an expert, but this expert hasn't shown up in the past few years. Some people say that he went to be a family doctor, but no one knows where he is exactly. What's the expert's name? Bojo asked. Dr. Chin said, Robert. What did you say, was his name? Bojo paused when she heard the name. She couldn't help but ask again. Dr. Chin said, Robert is an old expert. You probably haven't heard of him. Bojo caressed the bridge of her nose. She didn't say a word, but her thin lips lifted slightly. Dr. Chin didn't understand why young Master Fu was smiling. However, after that, the other party didn't ask many questions and changed the topic after just a few sentences. Speaking of which, Dr. Chin, do you know what happened to Brother Mo back then? How did his wrist get injured? Dr. Chin paused, his smile still lingering. I'm only in charge of treating young master, I'm not sure about the rest. Bojo didn't believe him. If she wasn't wrong, Dr. Chin was from the military and should be a military doctor with a title. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been that phone call. Bojo wasn't as observant as the Almighty, but she could tell that Dr. Chin's actions were different from the other doctors in the hospital. Only those who came from the military would walk with their backs straight. Even the stretch of their arms was different from others. But she couldn't force him to say it. Bojo was happy about one thing. The person she wanted to kidnap the most was the Almighty. In the past, she couldn't find an excuse. Now, she finally had one. Robert was clearly her grandfather, the housekeeper. In the past, when Bojo was alone, she had been injured, but they were all minor injuries that didn't require treatment at home. Before she found the person who had schemed against her, she didn't intend to contact her family. It was normal for her to not return for half a year. Grandfather Butler was the only one in her family. If she contacted him, he would be in danger. This was what Bojo had thought since she was reborn. Now, did this mean that she could kidnap the Almighty when she left Jiang City? After all, the Almighty's hand needed treatment. That was the reason she convinced herself. Bojo couldn't suppress the smile on her face when she entered the room. Chin Mo lay on the bed, watching the youngster who looked as though she had eaten honey. He arched a brow. What's the matter? Tell me so I can be happy. Bojo retracted her smile. How could she let the main character know about the kidnapping? She walked over, pulled a chair over, and sat down suavely. She supported her chin with one hand. It's nothing, Brother Mo, don't use your hands unless necessary. Just tell me what you want to do. Chin Mo placed the magazine in his hands to the side and asked slowly, I can do anything. Bojo's instincts told her it was a trap. She lifted her thin lips. Not suitable for children. What are you thinking about? Chin Mo changed the topic calmly. Speaking of unsuitable for children, shouldn't you explain who allowed you to stay in school and watch a bunch of naked guys walk around in front of you? Bojo didn't expect the Almighty to still remember this matter even after the National League. She thought for a moment, a serious expression on her face. I'm in my 3rd year of high school, it's time for me to study. Staying in school won't affect my lessons. Chin Mo chuckled, tossing the phone over to her. Bojo tapped on it. The #1 middle school internet was filled with posts titled, School Hunk Frog Jumping. She was indeed a little dumb as she frog jumped around the field with her hands behind her back. More importantly, the headmaster was standing beside her. Study hard. Chin Mo lifted the corner of his lips. Will I be punished? Bojo kept her phone. The headmaster is jealous of my good looks, but I can't help it. I have the heart to study. Since you have the heart, bring the physics book over, Chin Mo said faintly. Bojo wasn't sure if the Almighty was suspecting her again. But she knew what was going to happen next. The National League is over, it doesn't matter if I fail physics in the future. More importantly, the moment she started reading the physics book, she would fall asleep. Chin Mo glanced at her, his tone calm. How can I allow my student to fail? Brother Mo, it's not that I want to criticize you, but sometimes, you shouldn't be so vain. Bojo didn't want to take the physics book. She reached for a cigarette on the coffee table, ready to light it up. Chin Mo reached out with his left hand, pulling the cigarette back. Go eat your sweets. I'm out of sweets. She wouldn't have thought of smoking even if she had sweets. The thought of kidnapping the Almighty filled her with excitement and a cigarette to celebrate. Chin Mo placed the cigarette at the side. In the future, you're not allowed to smoke without sweets. Brother Mo, you want me to quit smoking? Bojo frowned. Don't you smoke too? Chin Mo knew that in order to teach a certain someone well, he had to set an example at the right time. I won't smoke when you're around. We'll quit together, Bojo said. That's fair. Chin Mo arched a brow. She was certain that he wouldn't be able to quit. Sure. Bojo paused. She probably hadn't expected such an answer. She laid there lazily. Are you really going to quit? The Almighty smoked more frequently than she did. She was impressed that he was able to quit so easily. As the nation's school hunk, you should take care of your public image. Chin Mo lifted the youngster's chin. Most importantly, your body. How can you still smoke when you have asthma, MMH? Bojo didn't reply since asthma was a part of this body. Ever since she had taken over this body, she hadn't thought about it much. The youngster didn't reply. Her thin lips were pursed into a straight line. Chin Mo sighed. Little Fujo, say something. Bojo heard the way little Fujo addressed him. Bojo felt a tightness in her chest. Her surname wasn't Fu. More importantly, she couldn't tell the Almighty her surname. Don't call me that. She hadn't expected the person in front of her to be so disgusted by the way she was addressed. What do you want me to call you? Chin Mo tapped her chin with his finger. Call her sugar daddy, Bojo thought. Just don't call her little Fujo. Because that tone of voice was filled with love, but it wasn't her name. Bojo tilted her head. She didn't know what was bothering her. Chin Mo watched as the youngster tilted her head. Her stray hair hung down. He reached out and pulled her back, allowing her to lie on his chest once more. His voice traveled into her ears, a gentleness in it. Madam Chin. Bojo froze. Her heart raced. Madam Chin. What is it? Chin Mo glanced down at her startled face. His tone was neither fast nor slow. We're already sleeping. Aren't you going to take responsibility for me? Once I kidnap you, you won't let me take responsibility. Bojo held back her words. She reached out to push herself up. Chin Mo's uninjured hand pressed against her back. He closed his eyes. Sleep with me for a while. This position. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.